Chapter 742. Instinctively, Su Zimo wanted to use a killing move from the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, Sanguine Ape Fruit Offering, against this punch that was as vast as the seas. That was purely a battle instinct. The so-called battle instinct was when one's mind went blank upon seeing the other party's move. However, one's body would be able to react and make the most accurate judgment without hesitation. Most of the time, one would not think about how to counter or dodge after seeing the other party's move. That was because it would be too late by then. Given their talent in combat, they had to rely on their instincts in melee combat. However, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he suddenly recalled that Sanguine Ape Fruit Offering was a killing move from the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and could be considered as a technique of the demon race. At this point of his cultivation, Su Zimo had already cultivated the killing moves from the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness to the point of perfection in both form and spirit. If anyone else were to close their eyes, they would not see Su Zimo in their minds. Instead, they would see a true sanguine ape demon king with torrential blood chi and killing intent. Perfected Lord Hun Yi and the others would definitely attack him. With that thought, Su Zimo's attack hesitated for a moment and he was disadvantaged in terms of aura. He could not retaliate in time and could only defend passively. In his haste, Su Zimo had just raised his arms. Di Yin's fist had already descended. Bang! Flesh and bones collided. Thud! Su Zimo's bloodline rumbled and he took a step back. Up till this point of his cultivation, Su Zimo had killed countless strong enemies in his path of conquest. This was the first time someone was able to force him to retreat in melee combat. He had lost the initiative because of a single mistake. There was no way a monster incarnate like Di Yin would miss out on such an opportunity. He strode forward and swung his arm, smashing it down viciously towards Su Zimo like a steel whip. The wind howled. Su Zimo's expression was calm without any hint of panic. His bloodline rumbled and the sound of a tsunami could be heard as his bones crackled. Swoosh! Against Di Yin's arm, Su Zimo punched out. This punch actually burst forth with a ball of dazzling brilliance. 6 spiritual marks, an inborn spiritual weapon. Cries of surprise came from the crowd. The Khanate Spirit Weapon Gauntlet was a treasure that Su Zimo obtained after killing everyone from Glass Palace when he first entered the ancient battlefield. No matter how strong Di Yin's physique was or how tough his arms were, there was no way he could withstand the heavy blow of a Khanate Spirit Weapon. The corners of Di Yin's lips curled up as mockery flashed across his eyes. Just as his arm was about to collide with the Khanate Spirit Weapon, he suddenly changed his stance and opened his palm, slapping down on Su Zimo's fist. Cripple him! Di Yin hollered with surging killing intent. Su Zimo's expression changed. Di Yin's palm actually erupted with a crushing and strangling power. It was like a huge millstone, suppressing Su Zimo's fist beneath it, constantly rotating, crushing, and strangling. That power had even penetrated the surface of the gauntlet and was acting on Su Zimo's fist. Su Zimo could clearly sense that his fist and arm seemed to be suppressed by a gigantic millstone and he could not struggle at all. Great Chaos Essence Palm. In the crowd below, Lin Xuanji murmured softly with a grim expression. The Great Chaos Essence Palm was a secret skill of Chaos Essence sect that was not passed down to outsiders and was extremely terrifying. When cultivated to the pinnacle, a casual palm strike would be enough to shatter mountains. If a cultivator wore a Khanate defensive spirit weapon, their bodies would appear unscathed on the surface. However, in reality, their organs would be ground to dust and there would be no life left. The Great Chaos Essence Palm destroyed everything. Even a Khanate spirit weapon could not defend against the crushing power of the Great Chaos Essence Palm. Thud! Su Zimo took another step back and swung his arm gently, secretly shocked. If he had not released tidal might at the last moment, he would have been injured even if his arm was not crippled in that exchange. Ever since Shura Yen Beichen imparted the tidal manual to him, Su Zimo had never wasted any time. There were a total of 9 levels to Tidal Might. Right now, Su Zimo was already at level 3. Dean was even more surprised. Under normal circumstances, there was no way Su Zimo would be able to defend against the great Chaos Essence Palm that he had changed his move the moment the two of them exchanged blows. However, the moment the two of them collided, Su Zimo's fist surged with triple forces that surged over like a tidal wave. That was the power that neutralized the crushing power of his great Chaos Essence Palm. There was no time to think about that in the midst of the fight. Dean had already seized the initiative with a torrential aura. There was no way he would give up on such an advantageous situation as he charged forward once more and extended his palm, suppressing Su Zimo once more. Bang! 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 The sounds of tough guys clashing echoed continuously. Dean closed in step by step. Su Zimo retreated continuously. Back at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, Dean had already displayed terrifying talent in melee combat and even neutralized the killing moves of the Mystic Classic of the 12 Demon Kings of the Great Wilderness consecutively. Now that Su Zimo could not use his demonic techniques, his strength was greatly reduced and he could not release many of his melee combat killing moves either. For a moment, he could not reverse the situation and was suppressed by Dean the entire time, as though he could be killed on the spot at any moment. Sigh, the difference is too great. To think that Dean was the one suppressing Su Zimo right at the start of the battle without the latter being able to resist at all. That's right. Let's see how long Su Zimo can last. Although the title of the strongest monster incarnate in history is strong, it pales in comparison to Dean. Actually, the current situation is already pretty good. The fact that Su Zimo can withstand so many of Dean's palm strikes has already proven his strength. The crowd discussed fervently. Little Fatty and the others had grim expressions and were extremely nervous. Their bodies were tense, afraid that something would happen to Su Zimo. Relax. At the side, Lin Xuanji was extremely calm as he pointed to the two people on the platform. Pay attention. Although Zimo is clearly disadvantaged and is retreating, he hasn't shown any signs of defeat. It's hard to tell who will win in this battle. On the stone platform, Yin's attacks were already getting more intense and ferocious. His movement technique was agile and frighteningly fast, darting left and right. His palm technique was even more terrifying as dozens and hundreds of palm shadows appeared in midair, suppressing Su Zimo from all directions. Su Zimo had a calm expression. Although he was retreating, the glint in his eyes was getting brighter. Even without his demonic techniques, he still had many trump cards. Pa! All of a sudden, a Sanskrit voice descended without any warning. Su Zimo chanted Sanskrit and pressed his palms together. His index fingers touched and his other 4 fingers intersected, conjuring a mysterious spirit seal. After conjuring that spirit seal, Su Zimo stopped retreating instantly. It was as though roots had grown beneath his feet and he was stuck to the entire stone platform, standing like an unshakable mountain. Yin's body shuddered. The bloodline and spirit energy within his body was blocked by the Sanskrit voice and came to a momentary standstill. At the same time, his great Chaos Essence Palm was slightly affected as well. Above the clouds, the expressions of the few Jinying Jinjuan of the Buddhist monasteries changed starkly as they exclaimed, "Immovable Foundation Seal." Even Monk Yin Lu was surprised as he murmured, "How is that possible?" Chapter 743. The immovable foundation seal was a dermic seal from the strongest cultivation technique of the Buddhist monasteries, the Daming True Sutra. However, the Daming True Sutra was long lost with the destruction of Daming Monastery. To think that not only would Fahua Monastery's world-cleansing Qinglian phenomenon appear in the phenomenon ranking this time round, the lost dermic seal of Daming Monastery would appear as well. Monk Yuan Kong, Monk Wei Fu and a few other Jinying Jinjuan of the Buddhist monasteries exchanged glances with flickering gazes. The defense of the immovable foundation seal coupled with the Daming mantra was extremely terrifying. immovable as a mountain, rooted in the ground. When Di Yin's great chaos essence palm landed on Su Zimo's body, a series of sacred and flawless Buddhist lights were released and a tremendous force was repelled. Su Zimo's body did not budge at all. As for Di Yin, his torrential attacks paused for a moment. Su Zimo's eyes lit up and he opened his mouth gently, uttering another Sanskrit word. Ma. The Sanskrit word reverberated through the world. At the same time, Su Zimo reached out with his palm and spirit energy surged, forming another Buddhist hand seal. A gigantic palm that shone with golden light appeared in midair. Spreading its fingers, it formed a prison that trapped Di Yin. It was one of the Daming Dermic seals, the immortal trap seal. The Dermic seal could even trap immortal energy. With the immovable foundation seal, Su Zimo had already stabilized the situation and was retaliating for the first time. Di Yin's expression was calm as the muscles and bones on his ears vibrated. Strangely, they moved closer to his cheeks and blocked out all sounds from the outside world. With that, the power of the Daming mantra was reduced significantly. Annihilation Sword Chi. Against the incoming golden palm of the immortal trap seal, Di Yin roared and conjured hand seals with both hands, shooting out a gray sword chi from his fingertips. The sword chi tore through the air and devoured all the life force and spirit chi in the void. That's the secret skill of the human emperor. As a disciple of Enigma Palace, Lin Xuanji was knowledgeable and recognized the origin of the sword chi right away. He sighed. Di Yin has indeed obtained the inheritance of the human emperor. Sizzle. Sizzle. The sword chi streaked across the golden palm and let out a shuddering sound. A gray sword scar appeared in the middle of the golden palm. Boom! The golden palm was split into two by the sword chi. Is that all you've got? Di Yin sneered. However, before his laughter could finish, it was drowned out by the sound of sword cries that resounded throughout the world. Clang! Clang! In the void, flying swords streaked across in a dazzling manner. 27 flying swords were all supreme-grade flying swords. Furthermore, each of the swords was flashing with blazing lightning. Electric snakes circled around them, making them look extremely extraordinary. These flying swords followed a unique trajectory, leaving behind sword scars in the air as they quickly condensed into a sharp and powerful formation. Ah, it's actually a sword formation. To think that Su Zimo would have this up his sleeves. In the crowd, the prodigy of the ancient array sect looked at the sword array on the stone platform and frowned, deep in thought. The sharpness emitted by this sword formation was so terrifying, but he actually couldn't see the origin of this sword formation. Have a taste of my methods as well. Su Zimo hollered and controlled the grade 3 illumination sword formation to engulf Di Yin. Sword chi buzzed and spun continuously in midair. Like a blazing sun, it emitted a destructive aura as though it could tear everything apart. Om. Ma. Sanskrit sounded once more. Su Zimo conjured different spirit arts with both hands. Jin Dan circulated and spirit energy surged as a sacred halo shone behind his head. Demon Subduing Seal, Fiend Suppression Seal. The other two Daming Dermic seals descended at the same time. Two gigantic golden palms appeared and crushed towards Di Yin from different directions. That was not the end. After the two Buddhist Dermic seals were released, Su Zimo channeled his mental cultivation technique and formed a ball with his hands in front of his chest. His palms shone brightly and a gigantic fireball was formed. Go! Su Zimo pointed forward. The gigantic fireball sped forward and the temperature in the void rose. While it was still in midair, the fireball suddenly exploded into dozens of fist-sized fireballs that rained down like a volcanic eruption. Instant thunder. Dark clouds gathered above Di Yin's head and spun continuously, forming a gigantic pitch-black vortex. Lightning flashed and thunder boomed as the world spun. A thunderbolt that was thicker than a water bucket descended and smashed towards Di Yin viciously. Stunning. Terrifying. Incomparable. Below the stone platform, more than 100,000 cultivators, and above the clouds, there were more than 10 Jinying cultivators. At this moment, all of them were silent and could not conceal the shock in their eyes. None of them expected Su Zimo's counterattack to be so domineering, sharp, ferocious and suffocating. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo released many spirit arts and secret skills. Among them, there were not only sword formations, but also secret skills of the Buddhist monasteries that were long lost. There were also fire spirit arts and thunder spirit arts that Zephyr Thunder Palace specialized in. Ren Tu, Su Cheng, and the others watched with widened eyes. If they were in Di Yin's shoes, they would only be able to neutralize such a terrifying attack with Jin Dan phenomenon. Di Yin narrowed his eyes without any hint of panic on his face. Slash. Di Yin controlled the Annihilation Sword Qi and pierced the center of the Candlelight Sword Formation. That was where the sword formation shone the brightest and was also its weakest point. The Candlelight Sword Formation shattered. The Annihilation Sword Qi dimmed and dissipated from the world as well. Mountain Carrying Art. Di Yin's hands swiftly conjured a spirit seal and two towering spirit mountains appeared in front of him, blocking the two Buddhist Dharmic seals outside. Bang! Bang! The two Dharmic seals collided against the spirit mountains with a deafening bang. Destroy! Di Yin opened his mouth and spat out a terrifying air current that formed a hurricane in midair and blew the incoming fireball away instantly. Pust! Seeing this scene, many cultivators sucked in a breath of cold air. This was already beyond the scope of spirit arts and secret skills. Even if everyone present was given the cultivation Dharmic formulation of that secret skill, none of them would be able to cultivate it. That required an extremely strong lung power. Without the support of strong organs and bloodlines, one's lungs would explode from releasing that secret skill. Di Yin felt his scalp tingle as thunder descended. It was way too fast. He no longer had time to conjure hand seals and release spirit arts and secret skills to defend. He raised his head. His pupils constricted rapidly like a full moon that was being devoured. Eventually, they turned into a pair of pitch-black crescent moons surrounded by terrifying whites. Visual technique, Eclipse Eye. Two cold glints flashed in Di Yin's eyes. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the thick bolt of lightning that was falling from the sky was actually shattered into pieces by the two cold beams of light. Crackling sounds could be heard as it shattered into pieces. That was the power of visual techniques. A single pair of eyes was enough to release a terrifying killing power. Di Yin released spirit arts and secret skills continuously against Su Zimo's domineering counterattack and blocked them all. For the cultivators watching below, it was truly an eye-opener. Good, good, good. Di Yin nodded repeatedly with a cold gaze that did not conceal his killing intent as he shouted, "In the past 100 years, no cultivator has been able to force me to use my spirit weapon. You're the first." Chapter 744. For the past 100 years, given Di Yin's capabilities, he could suppress anyone of the same cultivation realm with his palms alone. In fact, his palms could even snap and shatter supreme-grade spirit weapons with ease. Even perfect-grade spirit weapons could not injure him at all. If a cultivator truly summoned a connate spirit weapon, he could make use of his combat techniques to avoid the attack and kill the other party with ease. But now, against Su Zimo's ferocious attacks, Di Yin could no longer hold himself back and slapped his storage bag, causing a jade seal to appear in his palm. It shone with an extremely extraordinary luster. Go! Di Yin pushed forward and the jade seal flew out of his hands. Hovering in midair, it expanded rapidly like a mountain and exuded an extremely terrifying might that caused everyone to submit. Beneath the jade seal were 8 words, "Blessed by the heavens and blessed with eternal prosperity." Ah! That seems to be the heirloom seal of the great Qian Empire. That's right, that's it. To think that this treasure would end up in Di Yin's hands after the destruction of the great Qian Empire. That man is indeed blessed by the dragon bloodline and possesses great fortune. The jade stone of the heirloom seal was connate and had absorbed the spirit chi of heaven and earth as well as the essence of the sun and moon. There were already 6 spirit patterns on the surface of the jade stone. Later on, it was slightly modified by a weapon refinement grandmaster and turned into the heirloom seal. Legend has it that the jade seal was tempered by the chi of the dragon bloodline in the Great Qian Imperial Palace all year round. The emperor of the Great Qian Empire carried it with him, and over time, it developed the might of an emperor. Although the jade seal was made of jade, it was indestructible and could break metal and suppress all living beings. This was a true treasure of the empire. Back when the Great Qian Empire was destroyed, the 4 vassal states of the north region rose together and the flames of war spread everywhere. Every single one of them wanted to obtain the heirloom seal of the Great Qian Empire. There were even rumors that whoever obtained the heirloom seal would be able to re-establish a domineering empire that ruled for eternity. Now that the north region was divided into 4, for the past 10,000 years, the Great Zhou, Great Xia, Great Shang, and Great Yu dynasties had never stopped searching for the heirloom seal. Unfortunately, they returned empty-handed. To think that the Great Qian Imperial Seal would be in Di Yin's hands. Kneel. Di Yin's gaze burned as he hollered. The Great Qian Imperial Seal descended slowly and a massive empire seemed to be conjured around it, suppressing over with the might of an entire nation. Su Zimo's expression didn't change. He slapped his bag of holding and a large seal appeared in his palm. The seal was squarish and golden in color. There was a divine dragon coiled above the seal, looking extremely lifelike. This is, above the clouds, many Jinying Jinjuan's expressions changed slightly as they sensed the aura emanating from the seal. They could not help but stare at it. Di Yin frowned slightly. In the middle of the battlefield, he could clearly feel the power contained within the golden seal. Until now, this power had yet to be released. Once it erupted, it might not be inferior to the Great Qian Imperial Jade Seal. What exactly was it that could compete with his Great Qian Imperial Seal? This should be the treasure of the human sovereign palace. Although Lin Xuanji had never seen the coiling dragon seal before, he could roughly guess what it was. In terms of might and aura, there weren't many treasures that could compete against the Great Qian Imperial Jade Seal, and the human emperor's treasure was definitely one of them. No matter what, the owner of the Great Qian Imperial Jade Seal was merely the emperor of an empire. However, the owner of the coiling dragon seal was the human emperor. You want me to kneel? Su Zimo sneered and raised the coiling dragon seal, injecting spirit energy into it. Whoosh! 6 spirit lights shone in a bedazzling manner. The divine dragon that was initially coiled above the seal seemed to have awakened and suddenly opened its eyes, emitting a shuddering might that seemed like it could crush the voids and suppress all living beings. Roar! A dragon roar sounded. The coiling dragon seal flew out of his hands and turned into a streak of golden light, smashing against the Great Qian Imperial Jade Seal violently. Boom! There was a deafening sound. A series of bedazzling halos spread out from the point of collision. Golden light shone everywhere and dragons danced. The Great Qian Imperial Jade Seal was suppressed by the coiling dragon seal and trembled continuously while the glow of the jade dimmed significantly. However, the Great Qian Imperial Jade Seal was a connate spirit weapon at the end of the day. Although the might of the coiling dragon seal was strong, it was impossible for it to suppress it within a short period of time. Di Yin's methods were countered by Su Zimo time and time again. The killing intent in his eyes intensified as he swiped his storage bag and withdrew 2 black iron truncheons with a chilling aura. This is a weapon that Di Yin used 100 years ago. It's called the Extreme Frost Truncheons and is a connate spirit weapon. Lin Xuanji said in a deep voice, a mighty figure of Chaos Essence sect headed to the depths of the North Pole personally to collect frost iron ores and found a weapon refinement grandmaster of 100 refinement sect to refine these truncheons. They're about 4 feet long and weigh thousands of kilograms, they can split mountains. Demonis G nodded as well. In the ancient battlefield 100 years ago, there were countless weapons destroyed by this pair of extreme frost truncheons, and many paragons died to them as well. Kill. In a flash, Diin wielded the extreme frost truncheons with both hands and charged before Su Zimo once more. Swash. A chilling aura descended from midair. The surrounding air was almost frozen. Under the shroud of the extreme frost truncheon, Su Zimo could clearly sense a slight sluggishness in the circulation of his bloodline and spirit energy. Su Zimo was secretly alarmed. Even with his physique, bloodline and Jin Dan's quality, he was affected to this extent. If it was anyone else, their bloodline and spirit energy would have been frozen the moment they made contact. Su Zimo channeled his bloodline and the sound of tsunamis surged within his body. The Jin Dan circulated furiously. His palm swept across his storage bag and blood quencher was already in his grasp. Countercurrent. Swoosh. The sound of tsunamis burst forth and a bright blood light surged against the current. Against Di Yin's attack, Su Zimo did not retreat at all and retaliated forcefully, releasing countercurrent from the sea calming manual. His saber intent was released and it was as though seawater was surging in a mighty manner. The chilling aura released by the extreme frost truncheons could freeze rivers and lakes. However, it could not freeze the boundless ocean. Blood surged like a tsunami. Spirit energy was released endlessly through the tidal force. His saber intent was like the ocean. Be it bloodline, spirit energy or saber techniques, none of them could be frozen by the extreme frost truncheons. Clang! Blood quencher and the extreme frost truncheons collided violently. Crack! 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 A layer of frost covered the blade of blood quencher and spread rapidly, enveloping Su Zimo's palm that was on the handle. Even if it's a Khanate spirit weapon, I'll have to cripple it. Di Yin's gaze was cold as he smiled sinisterly. Not necessarily. Su Zimo's expression was unchanged as he swiped his palm gently across the blade of his saber. A smear of fresh blood splattered onto the blade. It was scorching like fire. Buzz. As though it was stimulated, blood quencher suddenly became excited. The blade vibrated and buzzed endlessly. A blood beam expanded and tore through the frost on the blade. The reason why blood quencher could advance to a Khanate spirit weapon was because it was refined, baptized, and soaked in the blood of countless experts in the backyard of the old temple in Dragon Burial Valley. Blood quencher was a ferocious weapon. It was the most bloodthirsty. The stronger the bloodline, the more excited it was. Now that it had tasted Su Zimo's blood, it burst forth with a terrifying power instantly. Blood chi spread and enveloped the pair of extreme frost truncheons instead. Even the extreme frost truncheons could not freeze that blood chi. However, this was only the beginning of Su Zimo's counterattack. Chapter 745. After drinking Su Zimo's fresh blood, blood quencher shone with a bright blood light and was ferocious. Su Zimo closed in and after a ferocious countercurrent, his saber stance changed and blood quencher pierced towards Di Yin's ribs from an extremely tricky angle. At the same time, Di Yin felt his vision blur as a fiend's shadow swayed and the wails of vengeful ghosts sounded in his ears in a shuddering manner. Shura Saber. It was the ultimate saber technique of Shura sect. Most of the cultivators present were paragons of the various sects and recognized the origin of that saber technique right away. Could it be fake? It's just a facade. A facade. He's already cultivated the saber stance of Shura Saber, how can it be fake? He's clearly obtained the true legacy of Shura Saber. Ren Tu's expression was terrible. Although he was a paragon of Shura sect and had even fused the corpse mountain and blood sea phenomenons together, he had yet to reach that level in terms of cultivation of Shura Saber. In other words, Shura Saber was much more powerful in the hands of Su Zimo than in his hands. Shura sect's Jining Jinjuan frowned. Shura Saber was the ultimate saber technique of Shura sect and would never be imparted to outsiders. Where did Su Zimo obtain the Shura Saber from? Furthermore, by the looks of it, that lad had clearly obtained the true legacy. Shura sect Shura is generous to impart the Shura saber to an outsider. Perfected Lord Hun E glared at Shura sect's perfected lord and remarked coldly. Hee hee. Perfected Lord Tian Ming of Zephyr Thunder Palace laughed strangely. We can't be sure if that lad is human. If he's a demon, Shura sect would be colluding with demons and all cultivators in the world would want to kill you. CK your mother. The perfected lord of the Shura sect was already annoyed when he saw his sect's secret technique being leaked. Now that he heard someone from the immortal sects accuse him of something like this, he couldn't help but curse out loud. These matters can be resolved in the future. Everyone, please observe the battle. Perfected Lord Yujun finally spoke up and interrupted the argument between the Jining Jinjuan. On the battlefield, the situation had quietly changed. After summoning Blood Quencher, Su Zimo executed his saber techniques. The two best saber techniques, Si Calming Manual and Shura Saber, were completely executed by him. The Immortal Saber technique and the Demonic Saber technique did not clash with each other. Just a moment ago, he was still full of righteousness, as if raging waves were beating against the shore, firm and unstoppable. In the next moment, there was an eerie chill. The white bones of purgatory were soft and treacherous. Natural and unrestrained, like a heavenly steed soaring across the skies. Although he could not use the methods of the demon race, Su Zimo had obtained the inheritance of two of the best saber techniques of the immortal and fiend races. In terms of the saber Dao, no cultivator of the same realm could compare to him. Coupled with a killing weapon like Blood Quencher, his might was even more frightening. Su Zimo executed his saber stance and closed in step by step, completely suppressing Diyin. The latter could only defend passively. Furthermore, he looked flustered and wretched as he struggled to parry. With the help of the extreme frost truncheon, Diyin's physique and bloodline power was definitely not inferior to Su Zimo's. However, his vision was already filled with corpses, Shura white bones and vengeful ghosts. The sound of the tsunami was earth-shattering and rattling in his ears. A saber technique as such could affect a cultivator's mind. If it was a cultivator with a weaker will, they would have revealed openings long ago and been killed by Su Zimo in a single slash. Diyin retreated continuously and his lunar eclipse eye shone with a dark glint. Maintaining his clarity, he swung his truncheons and formed layers of ice barriers around him. Cling! Clang! The sounds of Blood Quencher clashing against the extreme frost truncheon echoed continuously with sparks flying everywhere. A shocking battle broke out between the two monster incarnates on the stone platform. During this process, the spirit arts, secret skills and combat techniques released by both of them were eye-opening for the cultivators watching below and benefited immensely. Little Fatty and the others were nervous as they stared fixedly at the battlefield, feeling anxious the entire time. Right now, even though Su Zimo had the upper hand, it was still unknown who would emerge victorious. This was not the extent of Diyin's strength and terror. To think that Su Zimo would be able to force Diyin to this extent. By the looks of it, he might truly be able to topple Diyin and break the legend to become the #1 of this year's phenomenon ranking, the new #1 perfected being. On the stone platform, Su Zimo's attacks intensified and he gradually tightened his saber stance, compressing the space around Diyin continuously. Diyin's eyes were filled with rage the entire time. Initially, he thought that he could suppress Su Zimo with ease. To think that this person would be able to force him to this extent. Ah! Diyin reared his head and roared into the skies. A shuddering aura emanated from his body and the entire void trembled as the stone platform creaked. Against the suppression of that aura, Su Zimo's continuous saber stance dissipated instantly, there was no way to defend against it. Ah! A series of exclamations sounded from the crowd. Many cultivators felt goosebumps rising on their bodies. Jean Dan's phenomenon. That was the aura of Jean Dan's phenomenon. The legendary human emperor's phenomenon was finally about to reappear. An ocean appeared behind Diyin. It was above the darkness and above the light. It was chaotic, gloomy, and surged. Be it light, darkness, wind, fire or thunder, anything that approached the ocean would be devoured and vanish. Space no longer existed in that chaos ocean. Time seemed to have been thrown into disorder in this ocean of chaos. The human emperor's phenomenon, Chaos Ocean. Many cultivators looked at Chaos Ocean for a while and felt as though their minds were sucked in. They were dazed and lost their consciousness completely. Thump. The cultivator fell stiffly to the ground. The vitality in his body had completely disappeared. He was dead. Chaos Ocean was a fusion of heaven and earth and could devour everything, turning everything into chaos. Be careful, don't stare at it for too long. Lin Xuanji knew how powerful that phenomenon was and hurriedly reminded little Fatty and the others. If that was the case for the cultivators below, it was hard to imagine how much pressure Su Zimo would have to endure at the center of the battlefield against Chaos Ocean. Blood Quencher slashed against Chaos Ocean and could not advance any further, as though it had sunk into a swamp. The saber that was initially vibrating excitedly and buzzing went silent instantly. The 6 spirit lights on the saber dimmed gradually as well. Su Zimo gasped and his pupils constricted. How terrifying! If Blood Quencher was tossed into Chaos Ocean, it would not be long before the Khanate spirit weapon was severely damaged and it was unknown if it could be repaired. That was the human emperor's phenomenon that reigned throughout history. In front of Chaos Ocean, Su Zimo felt suffocated. His essence, blood, spirit energy, soul, and even life force were being forcefully pulled out of his body. In that brief moment of contact, Su Zimo felt as though his lifespan was depleted significantly. Di Yin's eyes flickered with faint mockery as he raised his arm and pointed forward. The Chaos Ocean behind him had already engulfed Su Zimo. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. If it could even destroy a Khanate spiritual weapon, he would definitely die if he was devoured by this ocean. Chapter 746. How were they supposed to defend against such a terrifying Jin Dan phenomenon? The moment Chaos Ocean rose, the other 8 paragons of the top 10 of the phenomenon ranking felt a sense of helplessness. It was especially so for Ren Tu, Su Cheng, Monk Jian Kong and the others. Initially, they wanted to take down Di Yin in this phenomenon ranking. It was only at this moment that they realized the gap between them and Di Yin. This phenomenon is clearly stronger than 100 years ago. Seems like Di Yin did not waste his time suppressing his cultivation for the past 100 years. Instead, his understanding of Chaos Ocean has deepened. We have to congratulate Chaos Essence Sect, Monk Yuan Kong said. There's no doubt who will be the top of the phenomenon ranking this time round. Once Di Yin advances to Nascent Soul Realm, Chaos Essence Sect will have another perfected lord. It was almost certain that given Di Yin's strength, he would definitely dominate everyone of the same cultivation realm and dominate Tianhuang mainland once he advanced to Nascent Soul Realm. Perfected Lord Luo Shui had a grim expression. There was no need for him to advance to Nascent Soul Realm. The power released by Chaos Ocean was already at the level of Nascent Soul Realm. If it was an ordinary Jining Jinjuan against Di Yin, there was a high chance that Di Yin would kill him mercilessly. What a frightening person. Perfected Lord Luo Shui lamented internally as she looked at the green figure opposite Di Yin on the stone platform with a hint of worry in her eyes. Perfected Lord Yujun shook his head gently as well. The moment Di Yin summoned Chaos Ocean, Jining Jinjuan knew that there was no doubt about the outcome of this battle. The only uncertainty was whether Su Zimo could survive. This lad was known as the strongest monster incarnate in history and was known as the second human emperor after cultivating to the extreme foundation establishment realm. These titles were all obtained through numerous battles. There was not the slightest bit of exaggeration. This lad might have some sort of trump card to escape with. Below the stone platform. What should we do? Little Fox looked at Lin Xuanji nervously without blinking her bright fox eyes as she whispered, Enigma Palace won't really leave young master in the lurch now that he's in danger, right? Lin Xuanji chuckled bitterly. Enigma Palace has always been impartial. They definitely won't interfere in battles as such. However, as long as Su Zimo leaves the range of the stone platform in time, Diyin won't be able to pursue him. Monkey raised his head slightly with an arrogant expression. He merely stared at the battlefield without saying a word. If Su Zimo was in danger, he would definitely help. In his heart, there were no rules. Worst comes to worst, I'll just turn the world upside down. On the stone platform, a huge shadow loomed over them. Sensing the terrifying aura of the primal chaos sea, Su Zimo didn't dare to hesitate. With a long roar, the Jin Dan was activated, and numerous avatars appeared behind him. Rumble. The heavens collapsed, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. Amidst the flood, the archaic divine turtle descended. Ka ka ka. The primordial soaring serpent had appeared amidst the collapsing mountains, erupting volcanoes, and flowing lava. In order to resist the chaos ocean, Su Zimo brought out the two great primordial phenomena at the same time. However, the moment the two primordial phenomenons appeared in front of chaos ocean, they shook. The divine turtle wailed and the soaring serpent roared, as though it was under immense pressure. Not good. Lin Xuanji's heart skipped a beat when he saw that. Heis. Perfected Lord Yujun sighed internally. If Su Zimo had chosen to retreat the moment Diyin brought out Chaos Ocean and left the periphery of the Chaos Ocean immediately, there might have been a chance for him to survive. But now, Perfected Lord Yujun lamented internally, it's truly a pity that a monster incarnate of the human race has died just like that. Ha 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 ha. Above the clouds, Perfected Lord Hun Yi's eyes were filled with mockery as he reared his head in laughter. To think that you're still thinking of fighting against Chaos Ocean. You truly don't know what's good for you. Diyin waved his hand and the Chaos Ocean surged over mightily, drowning the two great phenomenons of the divine turtle and soaring serpent instantly. The two divine beings struggled continuously in Chaos Ocean but could not break free at all. Instead, they sank deeper and deeper. The light on the two great primordial phenomenons dimmed rapidly and they looked like they could dissipate at any moment. How dare the light of a firefly compete against the radiance of the moon? Diyin looked down from above like an insufferably arrogant king. Extreme Foundation Establishment? Twin phenomenons? They're nothing but jokes after today. Ah! Su Zimo has already sunk into Chaos Ocean and can't escape at all. The moment his two phenomenons are destroyed is the moment he dies. By the looks of it, he won't be able to last much longer. A commotion broke out from the crowd. Monkey gripped his fists tightly and his eyes shone with a scarlet glint. His fur stood on end and a rumbling demonic chi emanated from his nose and mouth that was getting thicker. Within Chaos Ocean, Su Zimo's eyes did not contain the fear and panic that everyone else imagined. Instead, they were calm as still water. Fuse. Su Zimo's Jin Dan circulated with all its might and brought his palms together before his chest slowly. Along with that action, the two great Jin Dan phenomenons behind him closed in gradually and fused together eventually. One was water and one was fire. One was still and one was moving. The two primordial divine beings had already fused into one completely and were indistinguishable. The black tortoise had descended with the coiling of the turtle and snake. A shuddering aura spread out. All the spirit beasts and demons reared by the cultivators present, regardless of their bloodline or potential, felt the black tortoise's Jin Dan shudder. When the gigantic phantom of the black tortoise appeared, all of them felt their hearts shudder and wanted to kneel down in worship. This was a might that came from the depths of their bloodline and soul. The black tortoise was one of the four sacred beasts and the ancestor of many demon beasts and living beings. The expressions of the dozens of Jining Jinjuan present changed slightly as well. What a terrifying aura. To think that this lad would have a trump card as such. The power of that phenomenon has most likely surpassed the Jin Dan realm and is at the nascent soul realm. All the Jining Jinjuan present exchanged glances and were secretly shocked. What did that mean? It meant that the two Jin Dan perfected beings fighting on the stone platform possessed the strength to kill Jining Jinjuan across cultivation realms. A series of exclamations broke out from the crowd once more. No one would have thought that the situation that had already been settled would actually be stirred up again. A gigantic demon beast floated above the murky and dark surface of the sea. Its shell was etched with extremely mysterious patterns that seemed to contain the secrets of heaven and earth. The black tortoise raised its head and waved its limbs in the sea. It could not sink. Even the chaos ocean could not drown this sacred beast. Legend has it that the four sacred beasts were born from the chaos before heaven and earth was created. How could a fish drown in the water? Su Zimo stood on the back of the black tortoise with his hands behind his back. His green robes fluttered and his black hair danced wildly. His eyes were clear and could not be looked at directly. That figure stood on the black tortoise, as though he had already subdued the sacred beast and was using it for his own use. That scene was way too shocking and was etched into the hearts of every cultivator. He narrowed his eyes and his Jin Dan churned wildly. A series of raging waves surged in the chaos ocean. This was no ordinary seawater. Those seemingly dark waves were enough to kill any perfected Jin Dan present if they landed on their bodies. The black tortoise waved its limbs with all its might and moved against the current. A series of mysterious glows shone on its shell and blocked the incoming waves. Its massive body bobbed up and down amidst the raging waves. A figure stood motionlessly on its shell the entire time. The two of them were in a stalemate. It did not seem realistic for the chaos ocean to drown the black tortoise within a short period of time. However, it was also impossible for the black tortoise to wander the boundaries of the chaos ocean. Chapter 747. Two figures faced each other on the stone platform. The two unprecedented golden core phenomenons clashed repeatedly, bursting forth with streaks of light. Loud booms echoed. The spirit energy in the vicinity had been completely absorbed by the two phenomenons. The sacred beast, the black tortoise, has actually created a new Jin Dan phenomenon that can fight against the human emperor's phenomenon. That alone is enough to be recorded in the history of the cultivation world. Given how things are developing, it might be a competition of whose blood chi, stamina, and spirit energy are denser. The two of them faced each other on the stone platform. Neither of them dared to let down their guard. If Su Zimo's spirit energy was insufficient, Chaos Ocean would drown the black tortoise instantly and drag him into the depths of the ocean, killing him completely. If his spirit energy was weak, the sacred beast, Black Tortoise, would tear apart Chaos Ocean and smash him to death. Both of their Jin Dan circulated wildly and injected spirit energy continuously. The collision of the two Jin Dan phenomenons intensified. The stone platform made of bluestone began to creak and shake violently. Then, in front of everyone's eyes, it collapsed with a loud bang. The collision of the two phenomenons caused the stone platform to shatter. Sand and gravel flew everywhere as dust flew. The crowd was in chaos and cultivators retreated one after another. Even paragons like Ren Tu and Su Cheng would be crushed into a blood mist instantly if they were sucked in by the two phenomenons. Above the clouds. Perfected Lord Yujun stood up and said in a deep voice, "Everyone, both of them are rare paragons and monster incarnates of the human race. The death of either of them will be a tremendous loss for the human race. Now that the two of them have fought to this extent and the stone platform has already shattered, I think we should consider it a draw." Monk Yin Lu placed his palms together and nodded. "Excellent, excellent." Perfected Lord Luo Shui nodded as well. "I agree." "Draw?" Perfected Lord Han Yi sneered, "Yu Jun, as a cultivator of Enigma Palace, you should be impartial and impartial. How can you call it a draw before the battle is over? Isn't that laughable?" "Han Yi, you have to understand that my suggestion is not biased." Perfected Lord Yujun said in a deep voice, at this stage of the battle, it's unknown who will win and who will lose. It's just a matter of whose stamina and spirit energy are stronger. If this drags on, Dean might not necessarily win. That's right. I'm afraid the primordial chaos sect doesn't wish for both sides to suffer, perfected Lord Luo Shui said coldly. Ha 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 ha. As though he had heard the greatest joke in the world, perfected Lord Hun Yi exclaimed, both sides suffer? This was the biggest joke in the world. How can this junior who came out of nowhere be compared to a true disciple of my Hunyuan sect? This stone platform shattered just in time. Perfected Lord Hun Yi stood up as well, looking murderous as he said coldly, with that, there's no limit to the range. That lad won't be able to escape even if he wants to, the two of them will fight to the death. Perfected Lord Yujun's eyelids twitched when he heard that. Perfected Lord Hun Yi's words were filled with confidence and confidence towards Dean. It did not seem like blind confidence, as though he had something else to rely on. Could it be that Dean still had a trump card? Perfected Lord Yujun was shocked when he thought of that possibility. The gazes of the other 10 Jining Jinjuan flickered, they naturally understood the meaning behind perfected Lord Hun Yi's words as well. Monk Yuan Kong asked with a fake smile, fellow Taoist Hun Yi, could Dean still have some tricks up his sleeves? Fu. Perfected Lord Hun Yi chuckled and did not reply directly. Instead, he said indifferently, all the cultivators present today are extremely fortunate to be able to witness the birth of a monster incarnate who is comparable to the human emperor or even surpasses him. He would not rest until he shocked everyone with his words. This evaluation could be said to be quite high. Comparable to the human emperor or surpassing him. That was not something that could be spouted casually. It could not be spouted casually either. There had to be a reason behind it. All the cultivators present, including perfected Lord Yujun and the others, were shocked. Right then, the dust cleared above the ruins of the stone platform and two figures were revealed once more. They were still locked in a stalemate. Su Zimo stood on the black tortoise calmly with a calm gaze. However, there was still a hint of mockery in Di Yin's eyes. His lips curled slightly as he looked down at Su Zimo in a condescending manner. Finally, Di Yin spoke. Su Zimo, do you know why I said that the peak of the myriad phenomenon peak is your gate to hell? The cultivators below were shocked. Everyone found it hard to imagine that Dean could still spare the energy to speak in the face of such an intense collision. He continued, do you know why I've never taken you seriously? Su Zimo did not reply and merely looked at Dean silently. Dean raised his head slightly with a proud expression and answered his own question, that's because the difference between us is way too great. You can't even feel that difference. What bullsh** tea is this guy spouting? Monkey's eyes shone with a scarlet glint as he bared his teeth and asked. Little Fatty and the others shook their heads. The other cultivators were confused as well. You don't even know what trump card I have. Dean smiled faintly and murmured to himself, I've never used this trump card before. Initially, it was meant to kill Jining Jinjuan. You're very lucky to be the first person to die to this trump card. The crowd was silent. Everyone's eyes were filled with endless shock. Dean still had a trump card. Furthermore, that trump card could even kill Jining Jinjuan despite being a major cultivation realm above him. Little Fatty's sweat trickled down his forehead instantly as he murmured repeatedly, what should I do? What should I do? At that moment, Lin Xuanji was not as nervous as he was just now. He merely looked at Su Zimo on the battlefield with a frown and murmured, strange. When he heard Di Yin's words, even he, who was not involved in the matter, felt his heart tremble. On the battlefield, Su Zimo was still calm, as though he was not surprised. Di Yin glared at Su Zimo who was not far away and smiled faintly. He extended his palm slowly and raised his gaze. Su Zimo, take a look. What's this? Instantly, everyone's gazes landed on Di Yin's palm. A green lotus flower appeared in the center of his palm. It was emerald like jade and shone with a mysterious glow, as though it could purify everything in the world. Ah! That is, could it be, that's the Buddhist monasteries. A series of exclamations sounded from the crowd, but no one dared to continue. Above the clouds, the dozens of Jining Jinjuan were shocked when they saw that. They felt their scalps prickle and their hairs stand on end. Monk Yuan Kong's eyes widened in disbelief as he exclaimed, "World-cleansing Qinglian." Instantly, an uproar broke out the moment those words were said. Di Yin's voice sounded calmly, "Do you think that you're the only one with a double phenomenon?" The entire place went silent. All the cultivators felt as though their throats were gripped by a pair of invisible hands. They were suppressed by a terrifying aura and found it difficult to breathe. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 748. Many cultivators looked at the Qinglian in Di Yin's hands with shock, disbelief, admiration and pity for Su Zimo in their eyes. The moment Di Yin summoned the Qinglian, the battle was already over. Su Zimo's greatest glory could not compare to Di Yin's. He had a double phenomenon. It was the same for Di Yin. Furthermore, those two Jin Dan phenomenons represented the peak of the immortal and Buddhist Tao phenomenons. All other phenomenons had to bow down when two phenomenons were summoned at the same time. Di Yin is truly someone with great fortune. Not only did he obtain the inheritance of the human emperor, he even obtained the quintessence of the Buddhist monasteries. If not for Di Yin, Su Zimo would indeed be worthy of the title of the strongest monster incarnate in history. Unfortunately, being born in the same generation as Di Yin and being his enemy is his greatest tragedy. Many cultivators discussed softly. Little Fatty and the others were anxious and had terrible expressions. Right now, Chaos Ocean and the Black Tortoise phenomenon were locked in a stalemate. Di Yin's world-cleansing Qinglian was going to crush Su Zimo completely. Ming Zhen opened his mouth slightly with a conflicted expression. Among the cultivators present, he was probably the only one who knew how Di Yin managed to cultivate that world-cleansing Qinglian. Back at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, he was the one who personally handed the mystic Dharmic Lotus Sutra to Di Yin. However, Ming Zhen truly did not expect that Di Yin would be able to comprehend its profundities and cultivate that Buddhist phenomenon in just a month's time. What was a monster incarnate? This was it. On the battlefield. Riding on the black tortoise, Su Zimo's gaze landed on the Qinglian in Di Yin's hands. There was only a slight ripple in his eyes and he was not as shocked or flustered as everyone expected. It was as though he was scared silly. Di Yin looked at Su Zimo opposite him and frowned imperceptibly. Su Zimo was way too calm. There was no shock or fear as he had expected. Instead, that disappointed him. He. Di Yin smiled coldly and said proudly, "Su Zimo, how long do you think your black tortoise phenomenon can last under my twin phenomenon?" In fact, the moment Qinglian used world cleansing, the sacred beast black tortoise's shadow trembled. The black tortoise found it even more difficult to move its limbs and its body sank significantly. With a gentle push of his palm, the Qinglian in his palm drifted and landed in Chaos Ocean. Drifting with the currents, it gradually fused with Chaos Ocean. Hiss. This is, above the clouds, many Jining Jinjuan sucked in a breath of cold air as their pupils constricted. Di Yin raised his chin slightly and said slowly, "Today, I'll let you die with a clear understanding. Not only do I, Di Yin, have two Jin Dan phenomenons, but I've also fused them together. This is an unprecedented Jin Dan phenomenon. I call it Chaos Qinglian." When the Chaos Qinglian was formed, the initially noisy crowd went silent once more. Invincible. Monster incarnate. Unstoppable. Those were the only words left in the minds of many cultivators. Against the Chaos Qinglian, all words paled in comparison. It was only at this moment that many cultivators truly understood where perfected Lord Han Yi came from when he said that Di Yin was comparable to the human emperor and surpassed him. If one were to say that Di Yin's dual phenomenon and cultivation of the Chaos Sea and world-cleansing Green Lotus were comparable to the human emperor, then Di Yin's strength would be comparable to the human emperor. If you were to combine the two phenomenons into one and create a brand new golden core phenomenon, he would have already surpassed the human emperor completely. The power of that phenomenon was completely above Chaos Ocean. Even the dozens of Jining Jinjuan above the clouds felt their hearts skip a beat, let alone the perfected Jin Dan present. This meant that there was a chance that the phenomenon could kill them. There was no longer any anxiety in the eyes of little Fatty and the others. Instead, it was replaced with despair. Facing such an opponent, no matter who it was, they could only feel a deep sense of despair. This man is truly way too strong. At that moment, Ji Qingtian could not help but lament helplessly. This was Di Yin's true trump card. Di Yin stood above Chaos Ocean with a torrential aura. His figure was like an emperor that ruled over the world, he was unreachable and could only be looked up at. That was the number one perfected being. That was the number one of the Jin Dan phenomenon ranking. Su Zimo, what are you going to fight with me with? You want to kill me? What makes you think you're capable of that? Di Yin let out a deafening roar that was like rolling thunder. As his voice sounded, the Qinglian that floated in the middle of the ocean spun slowly and lotus petals bloomed one after another, releasing a bedazzling glow. Every single lotus petal was etched with mysterious patterns that seemed to contain the truths of heaven and earth. The Qinglian bloomed and released a world-cleansing glow. The black tortoise's phantom swayed and its glow dimmed, as though it could collapse at any moment. Hurry and escape, young master. Little Fox could not help but shout. It's useless, we can't escape. Lin Xuanji shook his head with a grim expression. At this moment, as long as Su Zimo makes any strange movements, his spirit energy will definitely relax and an opening will appear. He'll be killed by the Chaos Qinglian instantly. On the battlefield. Even as the black tortoise phenomenon could collapse at any moment, Su Zimo's heart was incomparably calm and his mind was empty. Right in front of everyone, Su Zimo sat down on the black tortoise's back in a lotus position. Lowering his gaze, he placed his palms on his knees naturally with his palms facing the skies. Has he given up on resisting? What else can he do? Who can defend against the Chaos Qinglian? I can die without regrets now that I can die in the hands of the Chaos Qinglian. In midair, he pointed at Su Zimo with a cold gaze and said coldly, die. The Qinglian that floated in the sea swayed gently. Swoosh. Along with a soft sound, raging waves surged from the surface of the sea and engulfed the black tortoise instantly. Su Zimo's figure vanished completely as well. Ah! A series of exclamations sounded from the crowd. It was over. Against the power of the Chaos Qinglian, the black tortoise phenomenon could not defend against it at all and was engulfed instantly. Even Su Zimo himself had sunk to the bottom of the sea and vanished without a trace. Little Fatty and the others stood rooted to the spot with widened eyes, unable to recover from their shock. Ha 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 ha. Perfected Lord Hun Yi reared his head in laughter. Good, good, good. If Di Yin kills this child, all the treasures on this child will belong to my primordial chaos sect. Roar. Monkey was shrouded in demonic chi as he roared into the skies. His bloodshot eyes shone as he glared at perfected Lord Hun Yi above the clouds, venting his endless rage and killing intent. Brother. Xiaoning's face was pale and her voice trembled. Su Hong was already dead. If Su Zimo were to die as well, it would be an unbearable blow for Xiaoning. Don't worry, boss isn't dead yet. Suddenly, Night Spirit's voice sounded. Night Spirit was glaring at the depths of Chaos Ocean with a dark gaze, as though he had noticed something. Lin Xuanji exclaimed softly as well. He could not tell what was going on within Chaos Ocean. However, he did not look relaxed after Su Zimo was engulfed by Chaos Ocean. Instead, his expression turned grimmer. What happened? Could it be? Chapter 749. In midair. Chaos Ocean was still surging with gigantic waves that showed no signs of calming down. However, the mockery in Di Yin's eyes had vanished completely as he narrowed his eyes and glared at the depths of the ocean, as though he had caught sight of something. All of a sudden, in the depths of this gloomy ocean, streaks of red light vaguely appeared. They turned brighter and clearer as they tore through the layers of chaos and pierced through the surface of the ocean. They shone brightly and illuminated the surface of the ocean with a scarlet glow. Flames. Below the chaos sea, there was actually a fiery glow. Immediately after, a massive figure floated up from the depths of the ocean with a puffed chest and head. It was the black tortoise that was engulfed by Chaos Ocean just now. Ah! The black tortoise phenomenon was not dissipated by Chaos Ocean. Where's Su Zimo? I don't know. This black tortoise phenomenon seems different from before. Su Zimo's figure had already vanished completely. Instead, a raging fire burned on the back of the black tortoise's shell, spreading in all directions. The flames were so intense that even Chaos Ocean could not extinguish them. All of a sudden, a bedazzling brilliance shone brighter on the right side of the skies. In the middle of the night, a blazing sun appeared, emitting a scorching aura. It shone brightly and illuminated Myriad Phenomenon City as though it was daytime. On the left side of the skies, the night was dark and the moon was silent. It was as though the entire world had been split into two completely different worlds. Sun and moon appeared at the same time. Darkness on the left and light on the right. In the middle of the two worlds, where darkness and light intersected, lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Endless electric arcs spread through the voids like spirit snakes. The simultaneous appearance of sun and moon emitted two completely different lights, yin and yang, that landed on the back of the black tortoise's shell. Yin and yang converged. The mysterious patterns on the back of the black tortoise's shell seemed to have been stimulated and released a series of bedazzling halos instantly. Swoosh! Flames shone brightly. All the cultivators, including the dozens of Jining Jinjuan above the clouds, held their breaths instinctively and stared fixedly at the battlefield. Destroy! Di Yin channeled his spirit energy and Qinglian swayed. The Chaos Ocean actually let out a series of roars and raging waves that continuously crashed against the black tortoise. However, the black tortoise was different. Its flames would never be extinguished. Perfected Lord Hun Yi frowned and asked in a deep voice, "What's that flame that even Chaos Ocean can't extinguish?" Monk Yuan Kong's gaze flickered as he said darkly, "There seems to be an aura of the Buddhist monasteries within that flame." Before he finished speaking, suddenly, Sanskrit chants resounded in the void. There was actually someone chanting sutras and worshipping Buddha in such an intense battle. His voice was like a great bell, deafening and incessant. Every word contained a mysterious and mighty power. The void trembled. "This is young master's voice." The little fox cried tears of joy. During her 20 years at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, she would often stay by Su Zimo's side. She would curl up under Su Zimo's knees and fall asleep while listening to Su Zimo's chanting. The little fox was all too familiar with these Sanskrit words. Su Zimo isn't dead. There seems to be something else going on. A series of exclamations sounded from the crowd. But, where is he? Apart from shock, the 100,000-odd cultivators were even more puzzled. On the battlefield, the Qinglian swayed and Chaos Ocean surged. The black tortoise's 4 legs suppressed the ocean in a towering manner. Flames surged from its back. There was no trace of Su Zimo at all. As time passed by, the Sanskrit chants grew louder. Right in front of countless gazes, a jade-like Qinglian grew slowly from the blazing flames. It was pure, flawless and shone brightly. It's the world-cleansing Qinglian again. Su Zimo has comprehended the world-cleansing Qinglian as well. Even without the reminder from Jining Jinjuan above the clouds, the 100,000-odd Jin Dan perfected beings present recognized the origin of the phenomenon right away. Right then, the Sanskrit chants ended. A calm voice sounded from the back of the black tortoise. Dean, sorry to disappoint you. I'm not a double phenomenon. Many cultivators opened their mouths slightly. It was only when they looked at the Qinglian on the back of the black tortoise that everyone realized something. Including the world-cleansing Qinglian, Su Zimo had already cultivated 3 Jin Dan phenomenons. No matter who won today, both Di Yin and Su Zimo had achieved unprecedented achievements. Di Yin's expression was terrible as he continued sneering coldly, so what if you have 3 phenomenons? All 3 of them are trash. How can they defeat my chaos Qinglian? Fufu. Su Zimo smiled faintly and did not refute. His 3 phenomenons represented the immortal, Buddhist and fiend respectively. Furthermore, they were the best Jin Dan phenomenons of the 3 lineages. In reality, Su Zimo had already cultivated the world-cleansing Qinglian when he left the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. He comprehended that phenomenon after reading the mystic Dharmic Lotus Sutra at the bottom of the valley for a month. How could Su Zimo not gain anything after laying dormant for 20 years? Initially, the divine turtle and soaring serpent phenomenons were in an intense conflict and were incompatible. It was precisely because he cultivated the world-cleansing Qinglian at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley that he was able to fuse the 2 phenomenons and form the black tortoise phenomenon later on. However, Su Zimo could not fuse the 3 phenomenons together at the end of the day. It was only when he ascended the myriad phenomenon peak that the knot was truly untied. On the myriad phenomenon peak, Su Zimo sensed the traces and auras of many ancient phenomenons. Those phenomenons represented the most glorious civilizations of the immortal, Buddhist and fiend sects in the ancient era. Although Su Zimo could not comprehend the myriad of ancient phenomenons, he could comprehend the Taos of the immortal, Buddhist and fiend sects through them. The coiling of the turtle and serpent, the fusion of fire and water, movement and stillness. Sun and moon accompanied each other, light and darkness overlapped and yin and yang converged. All those powers were used on the black tortoise's shell, triggering the intricate mysterious Tao patterns on the shell and releasing the true power of the black tortoise. It was also because of the existence of that power that the black tortoise was not drowned by chaos ocean. The flames on the shell were left behind by the Saraka flower. That was the sacred fire of the Buddhist monasteries. Even chaos ocean could not extinguish it. The Saraka flower contained the power of life. With the help of the Saraka flower, Su Zimo managed to fuse the world-cleansing Qinglian into the black tortoise phenomenon perfectly. Within the raging flames, an ancient Qinglian grew. Under the scorching heat of the flames, the green color of the green lotus actually faded away, and it gradually emitted a dazzling golden light. Within the terrifying sea of flames, the golden lotus was impervious to fire and water as it swayed and glowed. One after another, golden lotus petals bloomed one after another, gradually revealing a golden lotus platform within. On the lotus platform, a figure sat with his palms together with a lowered gaze. He had a dignified expression and was shrouded in a resplendent golden glow. It was as though a Buddha or Bodhisattva was sitting alone on the lotus platform and could not be looked at directly. Everyone focused their gazes. That figure was Su Zimo, who had initially vanished. Within Chaos Ocean, the black tortoise carried a lotus and appeared with the sun and moon accompanying it. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled as the sea of flames surged and the world trembled with a bedazzling golden glow. Chapter 750. No matter how turbulent the seawater was, the black tortoise carried the golden lotus and went against the current. Sun and moon accompanied each other as lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. The heads of the turtle and serpent roared into the skies and their divine might swept through the 9 heavens in all directions. The 2 Jin Dan phenomenons collided violently in midair. Bang! 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 Incomparably powerful air currents surged and the voids trembled. A series of scorching heat waves were released with the 2 phenomenons as the center. Pust! What a strong power! Jining Jinjuan's expression changed in shock above the clouds. The power released by the collision of the two Jin Dan phenomenons gave them a strong sense of danger. Without hesitation, everyone retreated from the battlefield, afraid that they would be implicated. Perfected Lord Hun Yi, Monk Yuan Kong, Perfected Lord Tian Ming and the others were shocked and enraged. They exchanged glances with dark gazes and could see the killing intent in each other's eyes. That lad could not be allowed to live. The power released by the Jin Dan phenomenon was enough to kill them. Even if they were in Di Yin's shoes, they could not guarantee that they would be able to defend against the Jin Dan phenomenon and escape unscathed. The phenomenon was a fusion of the mysteries of the immortal, Buddhist and fiend Taoist. In fact, it had even come into contact with the powers of heaven and earth and was comparable to Dharmic powers. I don't believe it. Di Yin's blood qi surged as he channeled his inner core furiously with a menacing expression. He was the number one of the previous phenomenon ranking. He was the number one perfected being. His achievements in Jin Dan phenomenons had even surpassed the human emperor. He was definitely going to leave his name in history and dominate Tianhuang mainland in the future. He must not lose. A defeat would mean that all his past glory would be gone instantly. All of that glory would become the stepping stones of the green-robed cultivator opposite him. The green lotus swayed and emanated strands of pure and flawless light, causing layer upon layer of tempestuous waves to arise in the ocean of chaos, and they whistled over. Boom! There was another deafening sound. Immediately after, a massive object tore through the waves and arrived before Di Yin with the might of heaven and earth, slamming fiercely. Swash! The chaos Qinglian flashed and blocked the path of the black tortoise. Bang! The chaos Qinglian and the black tortoise collided. The world changed. The entire space seemed to have frozen in an instant. Not a sound was heard. Although Qinglian was still intact, she had become dull and lifeless. There was no green in her at all, as if she had withered. As for the black tortoise, cracks appeared on its body. It paused for a moment before collapsing. On the surface, it looked like Di Yin had the upper hand. However, at this moment, his expression had become extremely ugly. This was because Su Zimo's Jin Dan avatar had not been completely destroyed. Although the black tortoise had disappeared, the golden lotus that grew in the flames was still there. Break! Su Zimo was like a god descending from the heavens. With a loud shout, he strode forward with the golden lotus in his hand and heavily smashed it onto the Qinglian in front of him. Boom! As the two lotuses collided, Buddhist light splashed in all directions. The true form of the golden lotus was also Qinglian of world cleansing. However, under the confluence of yin and yang, the casting of lightning, the immersion of seawater, and the burning of flames, it transformed into an eternal golden lotus. Metal was indestructible and eternally indestructible. To live as long as the heavens and earth, to shine as brightly as the sun and moon. Crack! 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 The chaos Qinglian cracked. Di Yin's body shuddered and his eyes dimmed as blood drained from his face. The chaos Qinglian released by the fusion of two avatars could even threaten Jining Jinjuan. It was clear how much of a burden that avatar was on Di Yin's body. Now that the chaos Qinglian was destroyed, the backlash caused by the shattering of the avatar caused Di Yin to be severely injured instantly. Di Yin fell backwards and coughed out mouthfuls of blood. Ah! A series of shouts sounded from the crowd. Di Yin was defeated. No one would have thought that this heaven-shaking battle would have such a result. The battle was intense and the many methods, spirit arts, and secret skills displayed by the two monster incarnates had completely exceeded the knowledge of perfected Jin Dan. Towards the end, even Jining Jinjuan had to avoid the Jin Dan avatar released by the two of them. Amitba, Monk Yin Lu lamented, in the ancient era, there was a legend of a dragon horse carrying a map out of the Luo River. To think that I would be able to witness the black tortoise carrying a lotus and breaking through the chaos personally. The younger generation will surpass us in time. The other Jining Jinjuan did not say anything. Some of them were still immersed in the clash of the two Jin Dan avatars just now. Some of them lamented while others shook their heads and sighed. There were even people whose gazes shone with unconcealable killing intent. Perfected Lord Hun Yi and the others exchanged glances with darkened expressions. The spirit energy within that lad's body has already dried up after releasing such a terrifying avatar and engaging in such an intense battle. The Jin Dan avatar is about to dissipate. Everyone, this is the best chance to kill that lad. We can't wait any longer. That's right. Given that lad's potential, he'll be way too terrifying if he's allowed to grow. After killing that lad, I'll take away the Purple Thunder manual on him. That belongs to Zephyr Thunder Palace. I won't touch any of the other treasures. I want the Divine Phoenix Bone. That's enough. We'll decide how to split the treasures after killing that lad. This isn't the time to argue about that. Perfected Lord Hun Yi and the others communicated secretly with their spirit consciousnesses. Right then, Di Yin's Chaos Qinglian avatar shattered and he fell backwards. Su Zimo chased after him murderously with the golden lotus in his hands. Perfected Lord Hun Yi's eyes shone with a ferocious glint. He could no longer hold himself back and attacked. Di Yin must not die. Even if he was defeated in this battle, he was still one of the top monster incarnates and the most talented person in Chaos Essence sect. As long as Su Zimo was killed, Di Yin would still be the #1 perfected being. Perfected Lord Hun Yi's glabella shone as he flicked his sleeves. Dermic powers surged and a gigantic sword appeared in midair instantly. It was sharp and had a chilling aura. In the blink of an eye, the gigantic sword descended above Su Zimo's head and slashed down viciously. The entire place was in an uproar. That attack was way too sudden. Nobody expected Jining Jinjuan to interfere in this battle. Furthermore, it was done without any warning. This could be considered as a sneak attack. How dare you! Perfected Lord Yujun's expression changed starkly as he hollered and attacked decisively. However, he was already a step too late. It's over. Lin Xuanji's heart skipped a beat when he saw that. Even bystanders who were not involved could not react in time. How could Su Zimo, who was focused on Di Yin in the middle of the battlefield, avoid that killing move? Furthermore, it was clear that Su Zimo's spirit energy was depleted and he was at his limits after his battle with Di Yin. Jining Jinjuan's sneak attack against a perfected Jin Dan was almost certain to kill him. Many cultivators could almost see Su Zimo's head being severed from his body. Right in front of countless gazes, Su Zimo, who was about to catch up to Di Yin, suddenly stopped in his tracks. In a flash, he twisted his body and propped the golden lotus above his head. Clang! The moment the golden lotus was raised above his head, the gigantic sword slashed down and struck the golden lotus, causing sparks to fly and an ear-piercing sound of metal clashing could be heard. Chapter 751. What a fast reaction! Everyone exclaimed. Even perfected Lord Yujun was a step too late for perfected Lord Hun Yi's sneak attack. To think that Su Zimo would be able to stop in time and block the golden lotus above his head. That was the benefit of cultivating the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Although he could not see or smell it, he could sense danger. However, sensing danger was one thing and defending against Jining Jinjuan's power was another. The gigantic sword and golden lotus collided and released a blinding light. A series of bedazzling lights burst forth and the air currents rumbled, almost overturning the surrounding perfected Jin Dan. The gigantic sword rebounded high into the air. The golden lotus exploded. Finally, the shocking phenomenon of Jin Dan was shattered into pieces by Jining Jinjuan after being depleted by Chaos Ocean. There was a boom. Su Zimo's figure crashed heavily into the ruins of the stone platform and was buried beneath the gravel and rocks, vanishing without a trace. Many cultivators shook their heads when they saw that. Su Zimo's spirit energy was already depleted after the battle with Diyin. The power of his phenomenon was clearly weakened as well. Coupled with the fact that he defended in a hurry, he was most likely crippled even if he did not die from the slash. What a pity. To think that the number one of this generation's phenomenon ranking would end up like this. This is the outcome of not having a strong sect or backing. Many cultivators lamented internally. Honey, what are you trying to do? Perfected Lord Yujun was enraged as he shouted and flicked his sleeves. The gigantic sword that Perfected Lord Han Yi conjured with his dermic powers was shattered by Perfected Lord Yujun's sleeves and turned into nothingness. Perfected Lord Yujun soared into the air and slapped his storage bag. With his spirit consciousness, he summoned two chilling flying swords that circled around him. The tips of the swords quivered like snakes flicking their tongues and aimed at Perfected Lord Han Yi. At the same time, Perfected Lord Bei Do of Heavenly Dipper Sect, Perfected Lord Tian Ming of Zephyr Thunder Palace, Monk Yuan Kong of Hollow Monastery, Monk Wei Fu of Diamond Monastery and the others stood up one after another and glared at Perfected Lord Yujun with hostile expressions. Lin Xuanji's heart sank when he saw that. From the moment Perfected Lord Han Yi made his move, the fight for the phenomenon ranking gradually went out of control. It was even to the extent that it might very well have exceeded the scope of the Enigma Palace's control. What? Yujun, you want to kill me? Perfected Lord Han Yi raised his eyebrows slightly. You have ulterior motives. You want to kill the prodigy of the human race. So what if I kill you? Even with Perfected Lord Yujun's temperament, he was truly enraged right now. Ever since the ancient era, ever since the establishment of the Jin Dan phenomenon ranking, such a terrible thing had never happened. Jining Jinjuan directly launched a sneak attack on Perfected Jin Dan, completely disregarding Enigma Palace. Such methods were simply too despicable. Honey, do you have any shame? Perfected Lord Luo Shui stood up as well. Her gaze was cold and she seemed to be covered in a layer of frost. Hee hee. Perfected Lord Han Yi glared at Perfected Lord Luo Shui before sneering, Yujun, this lad is a demon. What's wrong with me killing a demon? You're trying to kill me because of a demon. Yujun, Enigma Palace was created by Fairy Ling Long. Don't forget your ancestors and help the demons, Monk Wei Fu said slowly as well. Nonsense. Perfected Lord Yujun said coldly, Su Zimo has been to the human emperor's palace, ascended the myriad phenomenon peak and left his name on the ancient phenomenon stele. Both the ancient human emperor and Fairy Ling Long acknowledged him. That's enough to prove his identity. You guys are still distorting the truth. You deserve death. Perfected Lord Bei Do said indifferently, Yujun, make way. This lad is dead for sure today. Enigma Palace won't be able to protect him either. So what if Snowdrift Valley is included? Perfected Lord Luo Shui flashed and arrived beside Perfected Lord Yujun. The two great Jining Jinjuan of the Fiend's sect sneered coldly. Although the two of them were disdainful towards the ugly faces of those from the immortal sects, they chose to stay out of it and watch coldly from the sidelines. In the blink of an eye, two factions were formed on the battlefield. Among the immortal sects, apart from Glass Palace, 7 Jining Jinjuan stood out and Perfected Lord Luo Shui was the only one who stood on Perfected Lord Yujun's side. Of the 6 Buddhist monasteries, 5 of them, led by Hollow Monastery and Diamond Monastery, chose to stand on Perfected Lord Han Yi's side. Why are you guys doing this? Monk Yin Lu frowned and looked at the 5 perfected lords of the Buddhist monasteries in disbelief. Monk Wei Fu said deeply, I don't care if this lad is a demon or fiend. Regardless, he's not a member of the Buddhist monasteries. Since he's not a member of the Buddhist monasteries, he has to hand over the mystic Dharmic Lotus Sutra and other secret cultivation techniques of the Buddhist monasteries and cripple his Buddhist Dharma. That's right, the Dharmic formulations of the Buddhist monasteries must not be leaked to outsiders. The perfected Lord of Clear Heart Nunnery nodded as well. What do you mean? Monk Yin Lu said, the Buddhist monasteries emphasize on karma. Since he was able to cultivate the world-cleansing Qinglian, that's his opportunity and karma. You guys, Monk Yin Lu was enlightened when he saw the gazes of Monk Yuan Kong and the other perfected lords. Suddenly, he paused in silence. The reason why these people wanted to kill Su Zimo was not for the sake of righteousness or any other dignified reason. The reason why they attacked was because they were greedy. Monk Yin Lu shook his head and sighed. Standing up, he arrived beside perfected Lord Yujun. Even so, there were only 3 of them on perfected Lord Yujun's side. However, there were a total of 12 Jinying Jinjuan on perfected Lord Hun Yi's side. The difference in numbers was clear. In midair, the 2 factions were at loggerheads. On the ground, more than 100,000 Jin Dan perfected beings were gradually divided into factions as well. The largest number of people, a total of 60,000 to 70,000, chose to stay out of the matter. As for the cultivators of the immortal sects led by Chaos Essence Sect and Zephyr Thunder Palace, there were a total of 20,000 to 30,000 people who surrounded Little Fatty, Ji Qingtian, Xiaoning, Demoness Ji, and the others. Su Cheng and Heng Qiuyu of the immortal sects and Monk Jian Kong and Monk Zhu Chen of the Buddhist monasteries were among them, glaring at Little Fatty and the others covetously. As long as an order was given in midair, a chaotic battle would break out on the ground instantly. Those who are not involved had better stay away. Su Cheng glared at Little Fatty, Ji Qingtian, and the others and sneered, "Don't think that we won't dare to kill you guys just because you're cultivators of the unorthodox sects. Anyone who dares to stand on Su Zimo's side will be making an enemy out of me. Don't blame me for being merciless when the time comes." Right now, he was severely injured and was consuming elixirs to recover. Su Zimo had fallen into the ruins and his fate was unknown, he was most likely crippled. Rintu of Shura sect, who was 3rd on the phenomenon ranking, did not participate. As 4th on the phenomenon ranking, Su Cheng was definitely qualified to say that. Exclamation point. Ling Hu rolled his eyes and cursed, "Who the F***ck do you think you are?" Su Cheng laughed menacingly and pointed to Monkey and the other demons behind Little Fatty, saying with a murderous aura, "None of you beasts are going to leave today. I'm going to skin you alive and grind your bones to dust." Roar! Monkey, Ling Hu, and the others roared and turned into their demon forms. Unknowingly, Night Spirit's figure had already vanished. No one saw how he left. No one had found any trace of him. "Yu Jun, make way." Perfected Lord Hun Yi raised his chin slightly and said coldly with a sharp gaze, "Su Zimo is definitely going to die today. This is the trend. Enigma Palace won't be able to defend against it either." Boom! At this moment, a loud noise suddenly erupted from the ruins on the ground. Sand and gravel flew everywhere. Amidst the rumbling dust, a green figure could be vaguely seen rising slowly with a frightening aura. His black hair danced wildly and his eyes shone coldly with a torrential killing intent. Chapter 752. When the dust settled, the true appearance of the figure was revealed. It's Su Zimo. He's not dead yet. That dimmed golden lotus phenomenon that was on the verge of shattering managed to defend against Jinying Jinjuan's sword strike. If it was intact, wouldn't the golden lotus phenomenon at its peak be able to take on Jinying Jinjuan head-on? Everyone focused their gazes. Su Zimo's green robes were slightly tattered and he was not injured at all. On the contrary, Su Zimo's aura was even more frightening. A single glance was enough to cause one to feel uneasy, as though a calamity was about to befall them. Perfected Lord Hun Yi's sword strike seemed to have released an even more frightening existence. Initially, he had consumed many elixirs from the sect and was recuperating with his eyes closed to recover from his injuries. However, when he sensed the aura, he shuddered and opened his eyes instinctively, causing his pupils to constrict. Extreme danger. Diin could clearly sense that the current Su Zimo was even scarier than when they fought. Perfected Lord Hun Yi, you must have a death wish. Su Zimo stood in midair and glared at perfected Lord Hun Yi, who was not far away, his voice chilling. The crowd was in an uproar. He was openly challenging Jining Jinjuan. Furthermore, in terms of aura, Su Zimo, who was a perfected Jin Dan, could match perfected Lord Han Yi without being disadvantaged. Is Su Zimo crazy? To think that he would dare to provoke Jining Jinjuan even though his spirit energy is depleted. So what if he doesn't provoke him? Right now, there are 12 Jining Jinjuan joining forces to kill him. By the looks of it, perfected Lord Yujun and the other two won't be able to protect him either. If it was me, I would escape as soon as possible and find a secluded place to hide until I leave the ancient battlefield and return to Tianhuang mainland to break through to nascent soul realm. All the cultivators knew that the ancient battlefield was merely a dimensional fragment with incomplete heaven and earth powers. Even if they cultivated to the peak of Jin Dan realm here, they could not choose to break through. Breaking through to the nascent soul realm was no small matter. This was a step where cultivators relied on their own cultivation to reach a level where they could communicate with the heavens and earth. Even on Tianhuang mainland, one could die if they were careless, let alone in a broken dimensional fragment like this. Su Zimo's eyes were filled with murderous intent. Even though he was facing 12 Jining Jinjuan, he showed no signs of fear. From the beginning to the end, he had not used any demonic techniques in his fight with Di Yin. He had not even released any of the moves in the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness, let alone the power of his inner core. This was because the Enigma Palace had its own rules, and the phenomenon ranking had its own rules. Su Zimo abided by this rule not because he was afraid of anything, but because he respected Fairy Ling Long. Now that perfected Lord Han Yi had already broken the rules, there was no need for him to hold back. Although Su Zimo's spiritual energy was depleted and he was unable to release the Jin Dan phenomenon for the time being, he still had even more terrifying methods and trump cards. His inner core, his blood qi and his melee combat. If he were to get close to the dozens of Jining Jinjuan present, they would have to pray for their own good. Su Zimo, stand down first. Perfected Lord Yujun said deeply with a grim expression, this is no longer a fight for the phenomenon ranking. Let me handle it. Su Zimo could tell that perfected Lord Yujun's words were clearly meant to protect him. Before that thought was finished, perfected Lord Yujun's voice transmission sounded in Su Zimo's mind. Su Zimo, leave Myriad Phenomenon City first. Enigma Palace will naturally deliver the rewards for the phenomenon ranking to you guys. As long as they left Myriad Phenomenon City, the Jining Jinjuan would not be able to attack recklessly due to the rules of the ancient battlefield. At the very least, Su Zimo and the others would not have to worry about their lives. To be fair, the fact that perfected Lord Han Yi and the other 12 Jining Jinjuan had joined forces had already exceeded perfected Lord Yujun's expectations. Given the current situation, even he might not be able to suppress it. Trying to escape. Perfected Lord Han Yi's gaze flickered as he understood the meaning behind perfected Lord Yujun's words. He glared at Su Zimo and sneered, little b****, you won't be able to leave Myriad Phenomenon City today. Ha 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 ha. Su Zimo reared his head in laughter and pointed at perfected Lord Han Yi with a murderous aura. Old dog, you don't even know that you're about to die. How dare you threaten me? Swash. In a flash, Su Zimo transformed into a streak of light and charged towards perfected Lord Han Yi at an extremely fast speed. Against the combined forces of the 12 Jining Jinjuan, Su Zimo made the first move. B****, you must have a death wish. You don't know your place. Kill him. Perfected Lord Han Yi, perfected Lord Tian Ming and many other cultivators attacked one after another, targeting Su Zimo. With that order, Su Cheng, Monk Jian Kong and the others on the ground engaged in a huge battle with Little Fatty, Ming Zhen and the others as well. Instantly, the skies were filled with spirit light and dermic powers surged. The entire void was almost intertwined into an inescapable net of dermic powers that enveloped Su Zimo. Save him. Perfected Lord Yujun hollered and attacked without hesitation. Whoosh! Whoosh! Two flying swords tore through the air and transformed into two long streaks of light that pierced into the net of dermic powers created by the 12 Jinying Jinjuan. Ice Seal. Perfected Lord Luo Shui hollered softly and conjured hand seals. Her spirit consciousness rippled and released a dermic art of Snowdrift Valley. The temperature on the battlefield dipped rapidly. Instantly, a few flying swords were covered in a layer of frost. In fact, Perfected Lord Han Yi and the others even felt their bloodlines and dermic powers showing signs of freezing. Go! Monk Yin Lu flicked his finger gently and a faint flame drifted into the center of the battlefield. Crackle! The flame burned brightly and the dermic powers in midair burned. Perfected Lord Yujun, Perfected Lord Luo Shui and Monk Yin Lu joined forces and tore a huge hole in the net of dermic powers created by the 12 Jinying Jinjuan instantly. Perfected Lord Yujun waved his sleeves and they extended 100 feet. As though they were alive, they swept towards Su Zimo, wanting to rescue him from the chaotic battlefield. This was a battle between nascent souls. Ordinary perfected Jin Dan would definitely die if they were caught in it. Unexpectedly, Su Zimo sensed the change in dermic powers in midair. His blood qi surged and his inner core circulated, causing his speed to increase explosively, and he darted out of the range of Perfected Lord Yujun's sleeves instantly. In a flash, Su Zimo passed through the hole in the net of dermic powers and charged towards Perfected Lord Han Yi. Perfected Lord Yujun froze for a moment. Before he could react, the situation in midair had already undergone a shocking change. With the help of Perfected Lord Yujun and the other two, Su Zimo broke through the obstruction of the 12 Jinying Jinjuan and was less than 30 feet away from Perfected Lord Han Yi. Perfected Lord Han Yi's expression changed starkly and he retreated without hesitation. At the same time, his glabella shone and he conjured a dermic seal with both hands rapidly, gathering it at his fingertips. Dermic powers surged endlessly with a frightening might. All of a sudden, a figure appeared behind Perfected Lord Han Yi. It was like a phantom in the night, indiscernible. Night Spirit. Nobody noticed how Night Spirit entered the battlefield. By the time everyone realized it, Night Spirit was already behind Perfected Lord Han Yi, extending his palm and thrusting it towards the latter's back. Watch out! Monk Yuan Kong, Perfected Lord Tian Ming and the others were shocked as they shouted. Perfected Lord Han Yi was a top expert of the nascent soul realm after all and reacted in a flash. Dermic powers burst forth from his sleeves and shone brightly. 5 dermic patterns. What he was wearing was a perfect grade defensive Perfected Lord dermic weapon. As a top expert of the nascent soul realm who had experienced countless battles and was a Perfected Lord of Chaos Essence sect, how could he not have any treasures? How could he be killed so easily in melee combat? Chapter 753. Bang! Night Spirit's palm struck Perfected Lord Han Yi's back. The glow of the perfect grade Perfected Lord dermic robe flickered and dimmed instantly. The dermic robe caved in deeply and Perfected Lord Han Yi's body shuddered. Blood drained from his face as he stumbled forward. The dermic art that he had yet to conjure in his hands was dissipated as well. Nobody knew how shocked Perfected Lord Han Yi was at that moment. Thankfully, he was wearing the perfect grade Perfected Lord dermic robe. If it was a supreme grade dermic weapon, Night Spirit's attack might have shattered his organs. That power was way too frightening. Perfected Lord Han Yi did not dare to linger and fled into the distance. He had the perfect grade Perfected Lord dermic robe, and as long as he could hold out for a couple of breaths, Perfected Lord Tian Ming and the others would definitely be able to save him. However, even though he was fast, Su Zimo was even faster. Hand over your life. Su Zimo hollered and streaked through the void like a divine steed, arriving behind Perfected Lord Han Yi instantly. Su Zimo extended his arm and flung it towards Perfected Lord Han Yi's head. That arm resembled the trunk of an elephant as it wrapped itself around Perfected Lord Han Yi's head and shook. Snap! Right in front of countless gazes, perfected Lord Hun Yi's head spun a couple of times around his neck was completely broken. Clang! The head that was dripping with blood tumbled to the ground. It was already beyond recognition. The power released by that attack shattered perfected Lord Hun Yi's head, and his essence spirit did not even have time to escape. Perfected Lord Hun Yi was dead. The chaotic battle on the ground paused for a moment. Nobody expected the battle to be this tragic. Jining Jinjuan was already dead right after it began. Furthermore, he was killed by perfected being Jin Dan. The number one perfected being. That was the true number one perfected being. That was the method and boldness of the number one of the phenomenon ranking. In the chaotic crowd, Diyin heaved a long sigh of relief and a resolute look flashed through his eyes. Without hesitation, he sped out of Myriad Phenomenon City in a flash. He had escaped. The number one of the previous phenomenon ranking chose to flee at this juncture. The cultivators who noticed this sighed softly with emotional expressions. But at the same time, everyone could understand Diyin. Su Zimo was too strong. Even Jining Jinjuan had been cut down by it, so he had no choice but to avoid it. As long as he survived, with his talent, he would be able to step into the nascent soul realm and make a comeback. If he were to compete with Su Zimo again, it would be hard to say who would emerge victorious. On the ground and in the air, Jinren Jin Dan and Jining Jinjuan were fighting fiercely. It was chaos. Diyin's actions were originally nothing much and did not attract much attention. However, Su Zimo saw it. He had been paying attention to Diyin's every move since the beginning and had never let his guard down. In his heart, Diyin was a greater threat than perfected Lord Tianming and the others present. If he missed this opportunity, it would be way too difficult to kill him once he returned to Tianhuang mainland with a massive faction like Chaos Essence Sect protecting him. With that thought, Su Zimo made up his mind. Night Spirit, stay back and protect Xiaoning and the others. I'll go kill Diyin. Su Zimo left behind that statement and burst forth with speed in the direction where Diyin disappeared in a flash. Trying to leave. Leave the Purple Thunder manual behind. Perfected Lord Tianming, Perfected Lord Bei Dou and the others tried to stop him. Perfected Lord Yu Jun, Perfected Lord Luo Shua and Monk Yin Lu naturally would not ignore it and released many dermic arts and secret skills to defend against most of the attacks. Monk Wei Fu broke free from Monk Yin Lu's entanglement and shifted horizontally, blocking Su Zimo's path. Amit Ba. Monk Wei Fu chanted a Buddhist proclamation and extended his palm, clenching it into a fist. His blood chi surged and his arm shone with a resplendent glow, as though it was plated with a layer of gold. Boom! He punched out. Dermic powers surged and the voids trembled. Monk Wei Fu glared at Su Zimo with a burning gaze and hollered, "Demon, where do you think you're running to?" With that, Monk Wei Fu released 2 secret skills and a dermic art of Diamond Monastery. The 2 secret skills were the Enraged Diamond Gaze and Lion's Roar. The first dermic art was Monk Wei Fu's Punch. That was the ultimate skill of Diamond Monastery, the Diamond Fiend's subduing fist. Every single punch carried immense force and could subdue evil demons as though they were possessed by a diamond. However, Monk Wei Fu's visual technique could not affect Su Zimo at all. He cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness all year round and his vision was even stronger than Monk Wei Fu's. Furthermore, Su Zimo's will was firm and he would cultivate illumination eye daily. Enraged diamond gaze could not suppress him at all. Scram! Su Zimo was in a hurry to kill Diyin and did not want to get entangled with the latter as he roared with thunderclap kill. The power of his lungs was way too strong. That roar was like thunder that overshadowed Monk Wei Fu's lion's roar instantly. Against the incoming golden fist of Monk Wei Fu, Su Zimo's eyes shone with a ferocious glint. Without dodging or avoiding, he charged forward and stomped his feet. A ravine that resembled a natural chasm seemed to have appeared in the voids. Using Plow Heaven Stride as a foundation, Su Zimo punched out as well. His inner core churned and his blood chi gathered on his fist. The moment it collided with Monk Wei Fu, it gushed out. Boom! There was a deafening sound. The entire space seemed to have paused for a moment. The next moment, a figure was sent flying and nearly fell from midair. Monk Wei Fu's face was pale and horrified. The monk robes on his arms had already been reduced to shreds and his flesh was torn apart with streaks of blood. Pust! The perfected lord of Diamond Monastery who specialized in body tempering was sent flying by a single punch from Su Zimo. To think that Su Zimo's melee combat strength would be this frightening. Su Zimo's figure did not stop at all as he passed through layers of obstacles and chased after Di Yin who was far away. Di Yin sped the entire way. When he heard the commotion behind him, he turned around instinctively and caught sight of Su Zimo who was charging over. Lunatic! Di Yin cursed and conjured hand seals to channel spirit energy. 5 elements escape technique. 5 different colors of light shone from Di Yin's body and his speed increased exponentially, as though he was resonating with heaven and earth. Su Zimo narrowed his gaze and slapped his storage bag, retrieving a bunch of elixirs and stuffing them into his mouth. The pills and elixirs in his storage pouch were all perfect grade. The moment they entered his stomach, the elixirs turned into rumbling spirit energy that flowed through his limbs and bones before gathering in his dantian. Su Zimo was invigorated and a pair of 10-foot-long spirit wings extended from his back. Ethereal wings. Flapping his wings, coupled with the burst of Su Zimo's blood chi and physique, a streak of green light flashed across the ground and sped away at a frightening speed. The 2 monster incarnates charged out of myriad phenomenon city one after another. The one at the front was focused on escaping. The latter was focused entirely on chasing after the former. Neither of them noticed that a group of cultivators was approaching slowly not far away from myriad phenomenon city. There were more than 100 of them and all of them were tall. They wore black robes from head to toe and their appearances were hidden under dark hoods as well, giving off a menacing aura. Is this the myriad phenomenon city of the human race? The leader of the black-robed men paused in his tracks and raised his head slowly, gazing at the majestic ancient city before him. Suddenly, he laughed sinisterly. He, we're finally here. Chapter 754. Commander, hurry, look over there. A black-robed cultivator pointed to the east of Myriad Phenomenon City where 2 figures were sprinting into the distance one after another. Because they came from the south, they did not bump into the 2 figures. The black-robed cultivator said in a deep voice, the person behind has a pair of spirit wings on his back. It seems to be a secret skill that was created based on our bloodline. Great Commander, this subordinate requests your permission to kill these 2 people. The other black-robed cultivator said with a murderous aura, how dare they copy our bloodline? It's a blasphemy and they deserve to die. The leader of the black-robed men glanced sideways and 2 cold glints flashed through his dark hood. Go and return quickly. The rest of you, follow me into Myriad Phenomenon City first. The paragons of the human race are gathered here with countless treasures. It's a good opportunity to capture them all. I heard that the Protoss have entered the ancient battlefield this time round as well. We can't let them beat us to it. Understood. The black-robed cultivator bowed and retreated, wanting to chase after the 2 figures in the east. The black-robed man pondered for a moment and said, be careful. Look at the speed of their movement techniques, they must be the top paragons of the human race. Don't underestimate them and fall. Don't worry, Commander, the black-robed cultivator grinned. The bloodline of the human race is weak. No matter how much they cultivate, they won't be a match for us. Yes, go on, the black-robed man nodded. In a flash, the black-robed cultivator turned into a streak of dark light and vanished from the spot at a frightening speed. Myriad Phenomenon City. Although Su Zimo and Diin had already left, the death of perfected Lord Han Yi caused the battle to spiral out of control. Under the lead of Nia Hao of Chaos Essence Sect, Su Cheng of Zephyr Thunder Palace and monk Jian Kong of Hollow Monastery launched a series of ferocious attacks towards Little Fatty, Shi Jian, Ji Qingtian, Night Spirit, Monkey and the others. There were many paragons of the immortal and Buddhist sects and they surrounded Little Fatty and the others in the middle. Thankfully, cultivators of Chigurumon and Elixir Yang sect chose to stand on their side because of Leng Ro, Ji Qingtian and Xiaoning, preventing them from being drowned by the tens of thousands of paragons. Talismans filled the sky and flying swords crisscrossed. Among them, the 6 demon beasts, Monkey, Linghu, Qing Qing, Night Spirit, Little Fox, and Golden Lion, unleashed terrifying combat strength on a killing spree. Monkey, the Linghu, and the Golden Lion rampaged through the crowd. There were not many cultivators who could defend against them, with some suffering broken bones and tendons while others died on the spot. Qing Qing transformed into her true form. She flapped her huge wings and circled in the air, her claws and teeth sharp. On the other hand, the little fox used her fox charm technique to stare at the cultivators whose minds weren't firm enough. She directly bewitched them and caused a huge commotion in the crowd. The scariest was Night Spirit. Night Spirit's figure was like a ghost as he shuttled through the crowd. His feet never touched the ground, and no one could even touch the corner of his clothes. Wherever that figure passed by, paragons would die. The true cause of the commotion was that Su Cheng, who was number 4 on the phenomenon ranking, was beheaded in less than 10 moves against Night Spirit. His Jin Dan phenomenon, Apocalyptic 5 Thunders, was shattered by Night Spirit's 3 punches. The battle was getting fiercer and bloodier. Both sides suffered casualties. A battle as such was difficult to stop once it broke out. In midair, Perfected Lord Tian Ming, Perfected Lord Bei Do and the others wanted to kill Night Spirit a few times when they saw their own cultivators die. However, they were stopped by Perfected Lord Yu Jun, Perfected Lord Luo Shua and Monk Yin Lu. Yu Jun. Perfected Lord Tian Ming narrowed his eyes and shouted with a murderous aura, Perfected Lord Han Yi was ambushed by demons and the cultivators of the immortal and Buddhist monasteries were killed by those beasts as well. How dare you stand in our way when we want to kill them? Perfected Lord Han Yi's death is his own doing. Perfected Lord Luo Shue sneered, as someone of the immortal sects and Jining Jinjuan, it wouldn't be wrong for him to ambush Perfected Lord Jin Dan in such a despicable manner. Ba, Monk Yin Lu frowned as well and said in a deep voice, you guys were the ones who initiated the attack in this battle. Are you guys going to let those people down there surrender and be slaughtered by you guys? Perfected Lord Yu Jun shouted, Tian Ming, Big Dipper, give the order to stop right now. I'll handle the rest. Do you guys really want to see rivers of blood flow in Myriad Phenomenon City and mountains of corpses in front of the Myriad Phenomenon Peak? Stop. Perfected Lord Tian Ming laughed menacingly. We'll talk about stopping after we make those beasts pay with their lives. Ha! The Perfected Lord of Overlord Palace who was watching from the side clapped and chuckled, gloating, go on, fight. You guys from the immortal and Buddhist sects thought that the immortal sects were righteous. Now that I think about it, you guys are truly ugly and nothing more than that. At the side, Chu Yu of Shura sect crossed his arms and watched coldly as well. However, he frowned slightly. TSK, TSK, TSK. Suddenly, a sinister laughter sounded and drowned out the clamor of the battle, spreading to every single corner of Myriad Phenomenon City. Truly, lowly ants. The voice was erratic, as though it came from all directions and there was no way to determine its location. Even the Perfected Lord of Overlord Palace frowned with a bewildered expression. His glabella shone and he released his massive spirit consciousness to investigate continuously. As though he had sensed something, Chu Yu of Shura sect spun around and looked towards the south. A group of black-robed cultivators walked over from the long street in the south. There were more than 100 of them and they were unusually tall, more than 10 feet tall. The group of cultivators wore black robes from head to toe and their appearances could not be seen clearly. However, it was clear that they were not human cultivators. When Chu Yu's spirit consciousness came into contact with the group of cultivators, his heart skipped a beat and he retracted it hurriedly. What a thick malevolent aura! The moment his spirit consciousness came into contact with the bodies of the cultivators, he was almost tainted by the malevolent aura and his essence spirit was injured. The expression of the perfected Lord of Overlord Palace changed slightly. It was clear that he had sensed the strangeness of the black-robed cultivators as well. The dozens of Jining Jinjuan who were fighting in midair had no intention of stopping. Everyone glanced over, but they didn't pay much attention to it. Perfected Lord Yujun was the only one who seemed to have thought of something and his pupils constricted. You humans are always like this, always loving infighting. The leader of the black-robed cultivators approached and stopped in his tracks. In my opinion, there's no need for any calamity at all. It's only a matter of time before you humans seek your own destruction. Who are you? The perfected Lord of Overlord Palace asked loudly. Who are you? The black-robed cultivator chuckled. Do you think you're worthy of knowing? Insolent. Brazen. Where did this scoundrel come from? How dare he show himself? The cultivators of Overlord Palace did not take part in the chaotic battle. Instantly, some of them could not hold it in and arrived before the black-robed cultivator in a flash, thrusting forward with their spears. The spears tore through the air and let out a buzzing sound. It was clear how ferocious the spear was. The leader of the black-robed cultivators did not move at all. Behind him, another black-robed cultivator shuddered and darted forward. His black robes covered the skies and pulled the cultivator into it instantly. In the blink of an eye, the black-robed cultivator returned to his original position. It was as though he had never moved at all. However, the cultivators of Overlord Palace had already vanished. In the midst of everyone's shock, a strange sound echoed from beneath the black robes of the cultivator. Crack. Crack. Munch. Munch. It sounded as though someone was chewing on flesh and bones. Pust. Many cultivators felt their hairs stand on end. Chapter 755. The thick stench of blood spread out. One after another, pieces of scarlet flesh fell beside the feet of the black-robed cultivator. The perfected being Jean Dan of Overlord Palace was eaten alive by this black-robed cultivator. Which cultivator who could make it to Myriad Phenomenon City had never seen a dead person or killed someone before? However, seeing a living cultivator being torn apart and chewed up bit by bit with his own eyes, he still felt a great shock in his heart. Some of the female cultivators were pale and felt their stomachs rumble. Unable to endure it, they vomited on the spot. Night Spirit, who was initially on a killing spree on the battlefield, suddenly paused in his tracks. As though he sensed something, his nose twitched and he sniffed the air, causing his expression to change slightly. Night Spirit moved and disappeared into the crowd. Brother Zhao. Overlord Palace's fiend heir, Pang Yu, was so enraged that his eyes were about to pop out. Without a second word, he summoned his spear and charged towards the black-robed cultivator in huge strides. He, another one that has a death wish. In the crowd, another black-robed cultivator chuckled. His figure swayed as he said, "Leave that for me to eat." The moment he said that, the black-robed cultivator vanished from the spot. Pang Yu felt his vision blur as though a black shadow had flashed by. Not good. Pang Yu lamented internally. It was too fast. This speed had already completely exceeded what his eyes could see. Swoosh. It was as though someone was blowing air at his neck. A chill ran down his spine and his hairs stood on end. Without hesitation, Pang Yu summoned Jean Dan's phenomenon right away. Boom! In midair, the power of the phenomenon surged. An endless stream of spirit energy circled Pang Yu's body, forming a frightening pitch-black spear rapidly. Lightning flashed on the spear and it trembled slightly, causing the void to wail. Overlord Palace's legacy phenomenon, heaven-raising spear. Too late. The moment Pang Yu summoned Jin Dan's phenomenon, two words rang in his ears with a hint of mockery and killing intent. Immediately after, he felt a chill run down his throat. He was all too familiar with that chill. It was the coldness of a blade. The battle between the two had only taken a breath, and the outcome had already been decided. Under the watchful gazes of many cultivators, Pang Yu charged over and the black-robed cultivator vanished. By the time Pang Yu summoned his Jin Dan phenomenon, a ghostly figure had already appeared behind him. Wielding a chilling curved saber, the figure slashed at his throat. As a paragon in the top 10 of the phenomenon ranking, he could not even withstand a single move from this black-robed cultivator. Just as everyone thought that Pang Yu was about to be beheaded and die on the spot, a series of spear shadows tore through the air from the side. They were densely packed and pierced towards the black-robed cultivator at an extremely fast speed. These spear shadows actually contained a wisp of the might of heaven and earth. This was a spell. Jining Jinjuan had made his move. Many cultivators turned their heads to look. The perfected Lord of Overlord Palace glared at the black-robed cultivators with a grim expression. He conjured hand seals with both hands and his dermic powers surged. These densely packed spear shadows were created by him. Damn it! The black-robed cultivator who was initially behind Pang Yu shrieked. Suddenly, his black robes were torn apart and scattered into the air. The true appearance of the black-robed cultivator was revealed completely. He was tall and had dark skin. A pair of pitch-black flesh wings grew from his back and were dozens of feet wide when they were fully extended. The black-robed cultivator was extremely ugly with a green face and fangs. His nose was pointed upwards and his fingers and toes had sharp nails that were curved and shone with a cold glint. How was this a human? This was more like a malevolent spirit from hell. Sensing the pressure behind him, the green-faced malevolent spirit did not have time to slit Pang Yu's throat and reveal his true appearance. Flapping his wings, he turned into a dark streak of light. Shoo! Shoo! The dark streak of light was extremely fast and exceeded the visual reaction of all the cultivators present. It shuttled through the dense spear shadows in midair with unusual agility and dodged them completely, returning behind the black-robed cultivator. The crowd was shocked. On the one hand, they were shocked by the ugly and menacing appearance of the living being. On the other hand, they were shocked by the living being's capabilities. There was no dermic power fluctuation coming from the green-faced malevolent spirit. In other words, he was a living being of Jin Dan realm at most. However, the Jin Dan realm living being managed to dodge Jining Jinjuan's killing move completely with his frightening speed and escaped unscathed. Pang Yu felt his limbs go cold. Although he had already escaped with his life, his heart was still hanging high up in the air and had not yet calmed down. A streak of blood appeared on his throat. If the perfected Lord of Overlord Palace was slower by a single step, he would have been a corpse by now. You must have a death wish. Right then, the green-faced malevolent spirit had just returned to the crowd when the black-robed man in the lead roared and his black robes exploded instantly as well. That person's body was the tallest and strongest among the black-robed cultivators and his pair of pitch-black flesh wings exuded a shuddering malevolent aura. Swoosh! The black-robed man vanished. You guys are, Overlord Palace's perfected lord's pupils constricted violently. He had just raised the spear in his hands when his lips opened slightly and he stopped abruptly after a single word. Time seemed to have frozen. Right in front of the many cultivators, the black-robed man vanished. By the time he reappeared, he was already behind the perfected Lord of Overlord Palace with his wings retracted slowly. The black-robed man wielded two curved sabers in each of his hands that were etched with complex ancient patterns. Drip! Drip! Scarlet blood dripped from the sharp tips of the sabers slowly. Gulp. The head of Overlord Palace's perfected lord slid off his neck and rolled a few times on the ground. His bloodied head had a pair of widened eyes that were filled with disbelief, as though he had suffered an immense shock when he was alive. The perfected lord of Overlord Palace was dead. The perfected lord of Overlord Palace could not even withstand a single move from the black-robed man. Many cultivators watched everything in a daze and their minds went blank. The whole process happened too quickly and too suddenly. Pang Yu's gaze was blank. Before he could rejoice over his narrow escape from death, the senior of the sect who saved him was already decapitated. In midair, the dozens of Jining Jinjuan who were initially fighting to the death stopped at the same time. Perfected Lord Yu Jun, Perfected Lord Bei Do, Perfected Lord Tian Ming, Monk Yin Lu and the others had grim expressions as they glared at the green-faced, fanged monsters on the long street with deep fear in their eyes. In fact, it was fear. The chaotic battle on the ground came to a stop as well. Even a fool could tell that the green-faced, fanged living beings did not have good intentions. Initially, the massive myriad phenomenon city was filled with mockery and murderous cries. In the blink of an eye, it was dead silent. The air was filled with the stench of blood and a murderous intent. Night Spirit's figure was hidden within the crowd. He glared at the green-faced, fanged living beings and although his eyes were filled with killing intent, they seemed even more profound. He retracted his aura and tried his best to conceal his gaze so that the other party would not notice him. Little Fatty stood beside Lin Xuanji and could clearly sense the minute movements of Lin Xuanji's body. Lin Xuanji's hands behind his back were trembling slightly. "Brother Lin, where are those people from?" Little Fatty asked softly. Lin Xuanji's expression was terrible and ashen as he gulped before replying slowly, "One of the primordial 9 races, the Rakshasa race." Chapter 756. The hearts of Little Fatty and the others skipped a beat when they heard that. Instantly, the legends of the primordial 9 races surged into their minds. Legend has it that in the primordial era, there were thousands of races and the primordial 9 races reigned supreme. They were also known as the primordial 9 races by later generations. The primordial 9 races had always been at the peak of the 10,000 races with an unshakable status. The reason for that was because their bloodlines, legacy memories and secret skills were way too strong and could suppress the 10,000 races. Unlike the innate weakness of the human race, the primordial 9 races were innately strong. Even if they did not cultivate, they could sweep through the 10,000 races, let alone suppress the humans who were at the bottom of the hierarchy and were enslaved by the 10,000 races. In the eyes of the primordial 9 races, the human race was even lower than ants. If not for the great war that broke out in the primordial era that caused the 10,000 races to wither, bones to be strewn everywhere, blood to flow and countless races to be annihilated, the primordial 9 races were severely injured as well. The human race would not have had the chance to rise. In the subsequent ancient war, the human race won a Pyrrhic victory. The primordial 9 races were severely injured and could only settle in various parts of Tianhuang mainland. Those were the 9 forbidden grounds later on. Be it the elders of the immortal, fiend or Buddhist sects, they would definitely instruct their disciples not to set foot in the 9 forbidden grounds. Back then, in the golden era of the human race where multiple emperors rose, even a peerless hero like the human emperor who was feared throughout history could not destroy the primordial 9 races completely. That was proof of the terrifying foundation of the primordial 9 races. Most cultivators only knew about the primordial 9 races from bits and pieces of ancient records or from the words of the elders of their sections. It was said that the most ordinary existences of the primordial 9 races with bloodlines could kill other races of the same cultivation realm with ease, including humans. The purest existences of the primordial 9 races with strong bloodlines could even kill cultivators who were major cultivation realms above them. That was initially just a legend. But now, it was a bloody reality. The strongest Rakshasa was clearly one of the stronger bloodlines of the Rakshasa race, and his cultivation realm was equivalent to Jin Dan realm. However, his movement technique was so fast that even Jinying Jinjuan could not react in time. In midair, perfected Lord Tian Ming, perfected Lord Bei Do and the others had terrible expressions. Just now, if they were in Overlord Palace's perfected Lord's shoes, they would not be able to escape as well. Alas, in the end, I still couldn't avoid it. Perfected Lord Yujun heaved a long sigh internally with deep worry in his eyes. The reason why the phenomenon ranking was brought forward more than a month ago was because he heard news of the primordial 9 races entering the ancient battlefield. Ever since the ancient war, the members of the primordial 9 races rarely moved around Tianhuang mainland. But every time it appeared, it would set off a storm of blood. 10,000 years ago, it had caused a great catastrophe, causing 2 super sects and a great empire that had stood for 10,000 years to vanish into thin air. This time round, perfected Lord Yujun received news that one of the primordial 9 races, the Protoss, had appeared in the ancient battlefield. The Protoss definitely had a motive for entering the primordial battlefield, but he didn't know what it was. However, in order to avoid a conflict with the Protoss, perfected Lord Yujun chose to start the fight for the phenomenon ranking in advance. To think that he still could not avoid it. Furthermore, from the looks of it, the situation was worse than he had initially imagined. Before the Protoss appeared, the Rakshasa had already entered Wanxiang city. The moment Qi made his move, he unleashed a massacre. He had ill intentions. The Rakshasa race was the most savage race among the primordial 9 races. They had wings of flesh behind their backs and were swift and ferocious. They ate humans. Furthermore, they were extremely good at consuming flesh and bones. Among the Rakshasa race, the men were frighteningly ugly with black bodies, red hair, green eyes and fangs. They were menacing. As for the women, they were more beautiful and looked no different from humans, graceful and alluring. The Rakshasa race was also known for their speed among the primordial 9 races, and no one could compare to them. Perfected Lord Yujun glared at the tallest and strongest Rakshasa leader opposite him and said deeply, "I wonder what the Rakshasa race is doing in Wanxiang city of the human race. Of course, we're here to eat humans." The Rakshasa leader laughed sinisterly, revealing 2 pairs of sharp fangs that were dripping with blood. Cuckoo! The Rakshasa clansmen behind him were extremely excited as they spread their black robes and spread their black wings of flesh, revealing their true appearances. They licked their lips and could not wait to charge forward. Perfected Lord Yujun revealed a look of anger that gradually faded away. However, the gazes of perfected Lord Tian Ming, perfected Lord Bei Do and the others flickered as they glanced outside Wanxiang city from time to time. No one knew what they were thinking about. Perfected Lord Yujun said coldly, "Everyone of the Rakshasa race, Wanxiang city is the sacred ground of the human race and more than 100,000 human paragons are gathered here right now. There are only 100 of you. If a huge battle were to break out, how many of you from the Rakshasa race can survive?" This sentence was said with a murderous aura, powerful and resonating. As the successor of Enigma Palace, there was no way he could retreat even if he was fearful. Furthermore, there were many human paragons in Wanxiang city. If they were to truly unite as a single force, the 100-odd Rakshasa clansmen might not be able to gain the upper hand. Human paragons? The Rakshasa leader stuck out his scarlet tongue and licked his lips with a chuckle. "My favorite thing is to eat the flesh and drink the blood of paragons." The moment he said that, the Rakshasa leader's figure vanished suddenly. Perfected Lord Yujun and the others were shocked. Immediately after, the Rakshasa leader's voice sounded. It was erratic and difficult to determine its direction, but it spread through the entire Wanxiang city. "There's so much fresh meat. Kill!" The 100-odd Rakshasa clansmen soared into the air one after another, transforming into streaks of dark light that charged into the crowd for a massacre. "How dare you!" Perfected Lord Yujun was enraged and summoned his destiny flying sword right away. It hovered in front of his chest and he hollered, "Everyone, don't panic. As long as we're united." Before perfected Lord Yujun could finish, he was interrupted by another voice. "Cultivators of Zephyr Thunder Palace, heed my orders. Hurry and leave Wanxiang City with me." Perfected Lord Tianming's voice sounded and lightning coiled around his body. The wind howled as he released his sect's secret skill, Zephyr Thunder Escape, and fled out of Wanxiang City. "Cultivators of Heavenly Dipper Sect, heed my orders. All of you, leave this place." Perfected Lord Beidou's figure flashed and sped out of Wanxiang City as well. He had a flustered expression and did not dare to linger for a single moment. Immediately after, Monk Yuan Kong and Monk Wei Fu gave their orders as well. In the blink of an eye, more than half of the dozens of Jining Jinjuan chose to flee without fighting. Many of the perfected Jin Dan beings present were flustered and could not make up their minds to begin with. When they heard that voice, many cultivators fled in all directions out of Wanxiang City instinctively. Instantly, chaos ensued on the long street. Screams and tragic cries filled the air. "All of you." Perfected Lord Yujun's eyes widened and he felt chills run down his spine. Initially, their only chance of survival was to join forces and let go of all their grudges to fight against the Rakshasa race. Now that Zephyr Thunder Palace, Heavenly Dipper Sect, Hollow Monastery, and the other sects fled without fighting, it was equivalent to them losing their final chance. "Flee." Perfected Lord Luo Shui smiled bitterly. "Who can escape? Even if it's the unparalleled escape technique of Zephyr Thunder Palace, can it match the speed of the Rakshasa race?" "How foolish," Monk Yin Lu lamented, "there was nothing he could do." Perfected Lord Yujun's heart was filled with sorrow as he looked at the chaotic cultivators fleeing in all directions on the long street and tears welled up in his eyes. All of those paragons were going to become the prey of the Rakshasa race with no exception. Chapter 757. Perfected Lord Tianming released Zephyr Thunder Escape and Dermic powers surged. Like lightning, he sprinted out of Myriad Phenomenon City without stopping at all. In fact, he could no longer care about his disciples. Perfected Lord Tianming was not a sealer who was nearing the end of his lifespan. He was Jining Jinjuan who was at his peak. There was no way he would sacrifice his life to protect his disciples. Perfected Lord Tianming had a panicked expression and his eyes shone with fear. He did not make that decision out of a moment of folly, it was a decision made after assessing the situation. The primordial 9 races were truly way too terrifying. His fear towards the primordial 9 races was deeply rooted and originated from the depths of his bloodline. There was no way he could resist it. It was like how mortals would shudder when they saw ferocious beasts even without fighting them. Furthermore, just now, Perfected Lord Tianming knew that he was not a match for the Rakshasa leader at all and would definitely die if he stayed in Myriad Phenomenon City. Now that they had escaped right away, they might have a chance of survival. In truth, Perfected Lord Tianming was not the only one. Even Perfected Lord Beidou, Monk Yuan Kong and many other Perfected Lords had the same thought. Myriad Phenomenon City was in chaos. Figures danced in midair one after another. The eerie and terrifying laughter spread throughout the entire city. The Rakshasa race beings grinned widely, revealing their bloodied fangs as they glared at the fleeing cultivators below with shining eyes, as though they were watching a grand Taotai feast. Poof! A purple firmament sect cultivator did not manage to take a few steps before his chest was pierced by a dark light and fresh blood gushed out. That person's gaze froze and dimmed instantly. His body paused for a moment before exploding and dying on the spot. Ah! A nun from Clear Heart Nunnery had just soared into the air when she felt a shadow above her head. Before she could release her Jin Dan phenomenon, she felt an intense pain in her abdomen and nearly fainted. Instinctively, she looked down. He saw a bloody claw protruding from his lower abdomen. In the palm of the claw, there was a round gold core. The nun's head tilted to the side and she fainted on the spot. Hee hee. The Rakshasa took out the Jin Dan and swallowed it. Then, he dug out the nun's heart and stuffed it into his mouth, eating it until blood splattered everywhere. Similar scenes played out one after another. Although they were both at the Jin Dan realm, human paragons were completely helpless in the hands of the Rakshasa race. Ordinary Jin Dan phenomenons were destroyed by the Rakshasa race with ease. Only the paragons on the phenomenon ranking who summoned their Jin Dan phenomenons could hold on for a while. However, the Rakshasa race specialized in speed and movement techniques. Even the paragons on the phenomenon ranking could barely protect themselves with their Jin Dan phenomenons. By the time the power of their phenomenons was exhausted, they would still be meat on the chopping block. More than 100 Rakshasas wielded curved sabers and shuttled through the crowd wantonly. Everywhere they passed, blood and corpses were left behind. These streaks of black light were like the scythe of the Grim Reaper, harvesting the lives of the human sky prides. More than 100,000 cultivators fled in all directions. Little Fatty and the others gathered together, making them a small target. They did not attract the attention of the Rakshasa clan. What should we do? Sweat broke out on Little Fatty's forehead as he asked softly. The reason why all of them were gathered was because of Su Zimo. Now that Su Zimo was not around, they had no idea what to do either. Everyone's expression was different, and their thoughts were different. What's there to be afraid of? A scarlet glint flashed in Monkey's eyes as he glared at the streaks of black light that danced in midair. With a ferocious gaze, he said coldly, "Kill them all. I don't care what race they are from." Sigh. Ji Qingtian sighed. That's true, but the Rakshasa race is truly way too scary. Although he had a pained expression when he saw the Elixir Pool sect cultivators die one after another with their heads severed, he felt a sense of helplessness. Xiaoning pursed her lips tightly and was about to cry. Even with Len Ro's calm personality, her heart ached at the sight of so many of her fellow disciples from Chiguramon dying, and she had a pained expression. Linghu gulped and whispered with a flickering gaze, "Brother Monkey, the Rakshasa race did not provoke us. Let's avoid them for now." When Lin Xuanji saw that, he sighed internally. If they were already in such a state with different thoughts, what more the 100,000-odd cultivators from different sects and factions of Tianhuang mainland? It was simply unrealistic to gather these 100,000 cultivators together. The situation was hopeless. Today, the paragons of the human race would not be able to escape this calamity. Notwithstanding Little Fatty and the others, even the demon beasts around Su Zimo such as Little Fox, Qing Qing, the Golden Lion and Linghu were flustered with fear in their eyes. Monkey was the only one with a prideful expression, and the ferocious glint in his eyes did not diminish. Night Spirit was expressionless and followed behind everyone with a dark gaze. No one knew what he was thinking. "Night Spirit, what do you say?" Monkey turned and asked. "Let's take advantage of the chaos and leave." Night Spirit said in a deep voice, "If we fight, it'll be difficult for us to escape unscathed." Monkey's thoughts shifted and he gradually calmed down as well. Even if he was confident in his unparalleled combat strength, he could only fight against 1 or 2 Rakshasas at most. There were only slightly more than 10 of them in total. However, there were more than 100 Rakshasas. Furthermore, there was an even more terrifying Rakshasa leader who could kill Jining Jinjuan. Once a battle broke out, most of them would not be able to defend against the slaughter of the Rakshasa race. Let's evacuate Myriad Phenomenon City. The situation is over. Suddenly, Lin Xuanji's voice sounded with a hint of fatigue and helplessness. Since they had made up their minds, everyone no longer hesitated. "Let's go too." Monkey called out and everyone followed the crowd, escaping out of Myriad Phenomenon City. In midair, perfected Lord Tian Ming sprinted with lightning speed. Behind him, there was a sword light following him at an extremely fast speed. "Yu Hua, get lost." When perfected Lord Tian Ming caught sight of that from the corner of his eye, his expression changed as he hollered. The sword beam was perfected Lord Yuhua of Sword Sect who had released Sword Escape. In perfected Lord Tianming's opinion, the two Jinying Jinjuans together would definitely attract the attention of the Rakshasa race. Why don't you get lost further away? Perfected Lord Yuhua was not to be outdone and retorted. Before his sentence was finished, perfected Lord Tianming and perfected Lord Yuhua felt a chilling intent. An evil wind howled and a dark light tore through the air. It was way too fast. The Rakshasa leader arrived first and caught up to them. Exclamation point. Perfected Lord Yuhua was focused on escaping and reacted a little slower. Blood flashed and his head was separated from his body the next moment. A tiny person with a shimmering light flew out from perfected Lord Yuhua's glabella with a flustered expression. After leaving his body, he shuddered. It was clear that he could not withstand the killing intent and blood stench that filled Myriad Phenomenon City. Jinying Jinjuan's essence spirit was way too weak. When a perfected lord's essence spirit left his body, it was extremely easy for him to sustain injuries that were difficult to heal and there was even a risk of him dying. However, at that moment, perfected Lord Yuhua could not care less. However, the moment his essence spirit left his body, it was gripped by a pitch-black, thick palm. Caw, caw. The Rakshasa leader's laughter sounded. I've never tasted the essence spirit of a perfected lord before. Today's the perfect time for me to taste it! Exclamation point. The Rakshasa leader stuffed perfected Lord Yuhua's essence spirit into his mouth and chewed it into pieces. Perfected Lord Tianming felt chills run down his spine and his limbs went limp, he almost fell from midair. Chapter 758. After consuming perfected Lord Yuhua's essence spirit, the Rakshasa leader shifted his gaze and glared at perfected Lord Tianming who was not far away. He snickered and revealed a row of menacing fangs that were stained with blood. It's over. Perfected Lord Tianming was completely disheartened and had even given up on resisting. Don't be brazen, foreign race. Die. At this moment, a deafening shout came from the sky. It was perfected Lord Yujun, perfected Lord Luo Shua and Monk Yin Lu who arrived in time and released the strongest secret skills of their sex without hesitation. Instantly, dermic powers surged and the world changed. Although the Rakshasa leader's back was facing perfected Lord Yujun and the other two, he could sense the terror of the power behind him. Although the Rakshasa race was one of the 9 races and he could even kill Jinying Jinjuan despite being a major cultivation realm above him, it did not mean that he was strong enough to fight against Jinying Jinjuan head-on. Furthermore, he was facing 3 top perfected lords of Tianhuang mainland. However, the advantage of the Rakshasa race was not strength but speed. They could soar into the skies and burrow into the ground at an unfathomable speed. Even Jinying Jinjuan could not capture his movement technique. The Rakshasa leader sneered and his figure flashed. He did not want to fight against perfected Lord Yujun and the other two head-on and vanished from the spot, turning into a streak of dark light that disappeared into the voids. Perfected Lord Yujun and the other two were invigorated when they saw the Rakshasa leader escape. Tianming, the strength of the Rakshasa leader is definitely not enough to fight against us. Perfected Lord Yujun looked at perfected Lord Tianming who was still in a daze not far away and said darkly, as long as we join forces and form an encirclement, we might be able to kill the Rakshasa leader. That's right, Monk Yin Lu nodded as well. Just now, the Rakshasa leader does not dare to fight against us head-on. This is our only chance. Perfected Lord Tianming gradually snapped out of his stupor and realized that he had escaped death because of the appearance of perfected Lord Yujun and the other two. However, there was no longer any fighting spirit in his eyes. He was scared out of his wits. He understood that perfected Lord Yujun's words made sense as well. However, that Rakshasa leader's speed was so fast that they simply could not react in time. Even if they joined forces, what were their chances of winning? True Lord Tianming did not want to die. He only wanted to leave this place as soon as possible, leave Wanxiang City, leave this hell of Ashura. It's enough for all of you to work together. There's no need to count me in. Perfected Lord Tianming's expression changed as he pondered for a moment. A look of determination flashed through his eyes as he turned and sprinted off without turning back. Perfected Lord Yujun was so infuriated that his arms trembled and his face was filled with hatred. Monk Yin Lu's eyes shone with a hint of sadness as he sighed. Everyone wants to stay out of this. However, at this juncture, who can stay out of this? It's the three of you who want to join forces to kill me. Right at this moment, a sinister voice suddenly sounded in their ears, chilling them to the bone. Not good. Perfected Lord Yujun and the other two felt chills run down their spines. A cold light flashed with a deathly aura and headed straight for Monk Yin Lu's head, wanting to split him into two. Retreat. Perfected Lord Yujun exerted strength and pushed Monk Yin Lu away. Blood splattered. An arm was tossed high into the air and blood splattered in midair. Although Monk Yin Lu managed to escape with his life, Perfected Lord Yujun lost an arm and blood gushed out from his wound. Perfected Lord Luo Shui hurriedly stood in front of Perfected Lord Yujun. With a wave of her hand, she set up layers of ice crystals that refracted different rays of light, creating a visual distortion that temporarily obstructed the Rakshasa leader. Perfected Lord Yujun's face was pale. The weapons of the Rakshasa race were filled with an extremely evil power. It could cause lacerations and incessant bleeding. With a severed arm and severe loss of blood qi, he did not have much of his combat strength left. Furthermore, an injury as such was a grievous injury that was almost impossible to recover from. He could only regrow his severed limbs if he cultivated to the conjoint body realm. However, the path of immortal cultivation was long and fraught with dangers. It was unknown if he could cultivate to the void reversion realm, let alone the Dharma characteristic and conjoint body realms later on. Perfected Lord Luo Shui saved Perfected Lord Yujun, but to her surprise, the Rakshasa leader did not continue pursuing them. A dark light flashed. Worried about Perfected Lord Yujun's injuries, Monk Yin Lu hesitated for a moment and a massive gash appeared on his abdomen, causing his organs to nearly spill out. Ugh! Monk Yin Lu grunted dully. He knew that the Rakshasa leader did not intend to kill him or he would have been a corpse by now. He. A sinister laughter drifted and arrived behind Perfected Lord Luo Shui in the blink of an eye. It was still at the front a moment ago. Watch out! Perfected Lord Yujun warned, but he was still a step too late. A half-foot-long wound appeared on Perfected Lord Luo Shui's back from top to bottom. If it was any deeper, she would have been sliced into two. Ah! Perfected Lord Luo Shui cried in pain and lost control of her body due to severe loss of blood qi. Together with Perfected Lord Yujun and Monk Yin Lu, the two of them fell from midair. The three of them fell to the ground in a wretched manner. Their bodies were stained with blood and their faces turned increasingly pale. Yes, delicious. In midair, the Rakshasa leader was holding onto Perfected Lord Yujun's arm and was tearing at the flesh on it, gulping it down in huge mouthfuls. Perfected Lord Luo Shui felt her stomach churn and she nearly vomited. Perfected Lord Yujun's body trembled and his eyes were burning with rage as he grit his teeth so hard that they were about to shatter. The life essence in your flesh is even richer. That's rare. I'll spare your lives first. If I kill you now, your flesh won't be fresh anymore. Keek. The Rakshasa leader laughed menacingly. Suddenly, as though he sensed something, the Rakshasa leader spun around and looked towards the west. 8 figures tore through the air from the west of Myriad Phenomenon City. There were both men and women. The men were handsome while the women were ravishing. One of the women's limbs were bound and she looked haggard. The other 7 shone with a faint glow. Perfected Lord Yujun and the other 2 looked over instinctively as well. In midair, for Jining Jinjuan sped towards the west. One of them was Monk Wei Fu of Diamond Monastery and the other was Monk Jian Kong of Hollow Monastery. The other two were the perfected lords of Purple Firmament Sect and Clear Wind Temple. The four nascent souls just happened to bump into the 8 figures that were heading towards them. Scram! Monk Wei Fu was in a hurry to escape and could not care less when he saw the 8 people before him. He hollered and released the lion roar of the Buddhist monasteries. His blood chi surged and he released the diamond fiend subduing fist right away. Fufu. The man in the lead had golden hair and green eyes. He was tall and extremely handsome with a deep gaze as he smiled faintly at the incoming Monk Wei Fu. The golden-haired man did not dodge or retreat and charged forward instead. Get back! The golden-haired man's blood chi surged and shone with a golden glow. As his bloodline circulated, the sound of tsunamis could be heard. It was as though there was a vast golden ocean hidden within his body. The golden-haired man extended his arm and punched out as well. Bang! The fists collided. Time seemed to have frozen. Monk Wei Fu's expression was filled with endless pain and the sound of bones cracking could be heard from his arm. Poof! Monk Wei Fu spat out a mouthful of blood and his eyes dimmed as he fell from midair. His arm was already cracked. Pust! The cultivators who were fleeing were scared out of their wits when they saw that. Protoss. The Protoss is here as well. Perfected Lord Yujun's eyes were filled with despair as he lamented, are the paragons of the human race really going to suffer such a calamity in Myriad Phenomenon City? Chapter 759. The Protoss was also one of the primordial 9 races. However, they were different from the Rakshasa race. If the Rakshasa race specialized in speed, the Protoss's bloodline was the most frightening. The bloodline of the Protoss was not scarlet, but golden. The power of blood chi, physique and melee combat strength of the Protoss were extremely frightening. Monk Wei Fu of Diamond Monastery specialized in body tempering. However, against the leader of the Protoss, he could not even last a single move and his arm was shattered with a single punch. Thereafter, the Protoss leader caught up to him in a couple of steps and stomped his body into pieces, destroying both his essence spirit and essence spirit. If even Monk Wei Fu could not do it, the other Jining Jinjuan were even less of a match in melee combat. The Protoss had a noble bloodline and proclaimed themselves as the gods of all races in the primordial era. They lived as long as heaven and earth and shone with the sun and moon. They were closer to the spirit chi of heaven and earth and could easily manipulate spirit chi and dermic powers. It was easy for the Protoss to learn the same spirit arts and secret skills. Once released, their might would increase exponentially. The Rakshasa leader did not dare to take on the Jining Jinjuan of the human race head-on and could only rely on his movement techniques and speed. However, the strength of the Protoss leader was already enough to suppress the Jining Jinjuan of the human race head-on. The descent of the Protoss was devastating for the humans who were struggling to survive in Myriad Phenomenon City. The Protoss leader attacked brazenly and golden blood chi surged around him. It was as though a golden ocean surrounded him and he shone brightly like a divine being. Nobody is allowed to leave without my permission. Although his tone was calm, there was no room for doubt. The Protoss leader's golden hair danced and his eyes shone brightly. Fighting 1 against 3, he stopped Monk Yuan Kong, the perfected lords of Purple Firmament Sect and Clear Wind Temple. He fought against 3 Jining Jinjuan with his Jin Dan realm cultivation. That was the terror of the Protoss. Among the remaining 6 Protoss, one of the Protoss personally held down the woman whose hands and feet were tied up. The other 5 Protoss charged into the fleeing human prodigies and began a massacre. Galaxy Vortex. When the Paragon of Heavenly Dippers sect saw that the city gates were right before him and he would be able to escape from Myriad Phenomenon City as long as he charged over, he could not help but muster his courage and summon Jin Dan's phenomenon to face it. It's just the light of a firefly. Break for me. The Protoss on the other side didn't dodge. There was deep disdain in his eyes. He chuckled, stretched out his arm, and punched the stars in front of him. Boom! The stars in the sky scattered. The phenomenon disappeared. One had to know that the galaxy vortex phenomenon was ranked 12th on the Jean-Dan phenomenon ranking. But now, the Protoss had broken it with a single punch with his bare hands. Such a terrifying chi and blood, such a shocking physical body, such a terrifying strength, it was simply invincible and impossible to resist. Almost at the same time, the Jean-Dan phenomenons of the other human paragons were destroyed by the Protoss as well. Phenomenon ranking. Paragons? That's all a joke. A bunch of ants who only know how to deceive themselves. The Protoss reared his head in laughter and mocked wantonly. Ren 2, who was third on the phenomenon ranking, summoned Corpse Mountain Blood Sea and defended against a Protoss. However, against the attacks of the Protoss, the Jean-Dan phenomenon wavered and dimmed, it could dissipate at any moment. Ren 2's expression was terrible and he was forced to retreat continuously, it was only a matter of time before he was defeated. In midair, 2 of the 3 perfected lords fighting against the Protoss leader were already dead. The remaining monk Yuan Kong could not hold out on his own as well. Within a couple of moves, the Protoss leader caught hold of an opening and punched him in the chest. His heart exploded and he fell to the ground, dying on the spot with blood spewing from his mouth. The Protoss leader stood in midair and blocked the escape route to the west of Myriad Phenomenon City with a domineering might. None of the cultivators dared to advance. The dense crowd of human paragons had just surged over when they started retreating and were killed by the dark light that sped through the air. The Rakshasa leader shifted his gaze and looked at the Protoss leader. He scoffed coldly and said in an eccentric manner, "You Protoss sure are early." Likewise, the Protoss leader replied indifferently, but the massacre in his hands did not stop. Poof! Perfected Lord Bei Do's head was destroyed by a single punch from the Protoss leader and his essence spirit was destroyed. Another Jining Jinjuan was dead. Myriad Phenomenon City was filled with corpses and rivers of blood, it was like purgatory. The prodigies of the human race were facing an unprecedented catastrophe. During this period of time, it was not as if no one had stood out to resist. However, against the terrifying combat strength of the Rakshasa and Protoss, those cultivators were suppressed without causing much of a commotion. They could either lie on the ground and turn into cold corpses, or they could end up in the stomachs of the Rakshasa race. Of the 17 Jining Jinjuan, only Perfected Lord Yujun, Perfected Lord Luo Shui, Monk Yin Lu, Perfected Lord Soaring Feather Sect, Shura Sect's Perfected Lord Chu Yu and Wisdom Monastery's Perfected Lord were left. Furthermore, the 6 of them were severely injured and sat limply on the ground. They could only watch helplessly with despair. Sinner. I'm a sinner. Perfected Lord Yujun struggled to stand up and shuddered, as though he had aged significantly in an instant. Perfected Lord Yujun could not help but feel heartbroken when he saw the human paragons being slaughtered wantonly in the hands of the Rakshasa and Protoss like fish on a chopping board. This was Myriad Phenomenon City, the sacred ground of the human race. In the ancient era, when the human emperor was born and multiple emperors rose, which other race would dare to step foot into the city? There was an ancient phenomenon still here. There were footprints left behind by countless predecessors. In fact, there were even figures of the ancient emperors here. However, countless years later, in the same ancient city at the foot of the Myriad Phenomenon Mountain, the human paragons were slaughtered wantonly by foreign races without being able to fight back at all. I've let Fairy Ling Long down. I've let down the predecessors of the human race. Perfected Lord Yujun had lost too much blood and was frighteningly pale. He knelt on the ground and kowtowed heavily in the direction of the ancient phenomenon steel with a sorrowful expression. Heis. Monk Yin Lu heaved a long sigh. Even though the Buddhist monasteries emphasized on karma and reincarnation and he was indifferent to life and death, he still felt a sense of sadness at this moment. May the heavens and emperors take pity on us. Can you guys see that the human paragons are going through a catastrophe right now? Who's here to save them? Perfected Lord Luo Shui was dejected as she raised her head to look at the gray skies. Two streams of tears flowed down from the corners of her eyes and turned into ice crystals instantly as she murmured softly. The arrogant laughter of the Rakshasa and Protoss reverberated through myriad phenomenon city in an ear-piercing manner. However, countless human paragons were struggling and screaming helplessly. It was heart-wrenching. Be it men or women, immortals or fiends, at this moment, the lives of the human paragons were like weeds that were reaped mercilessly by the Rakshasa and Protoss. Blood flowed for thousands of miles and wails filled the land. In the blink of an eye, there were only about 80,000 of the 100,000 paragons left. Furthermore, this number was still decreasing rapidly. The remaining cultivators ran in all directions in a panic. Their faces were filled with fear as they screamed for the heavens and earth. Some of the cultivators even gave up on escaping and knelt on the ground, begging the heavens. Myriad Phenomenon City was reduced to an endless hell. Chapter 760. Perfected Lord Tianming sprinted the entire way and was drenched in sweat. Half of it was because he had channeled his dermic powers to their limits. The other half was because he was frightened out of his wits and was drenched in cold sweat. He had already left Myriad Phenomenon City far behind him. Perfected Lord Yujun, Monk Yin Lu and Perfected Lord Luo Shui stepped in to stop the Rakshasa leader and save him. Coupled with the appearance of the Protoss, he was able to make use of the chaos to escape the city. Even so, he did not dare to linger and sprinted into the distance without turning back, afraid that the Rakshasa leader would chase after him. After sprinting for a while more, he could only hear the howling of the wind and his own panting. It was only then that Perfected Lord Tianming gradually came to a stop and turned back with lingering fear. At the end of his vision, Myriad Phenomenon City was reduced to a black dot the size of a palm. However, he could still clearly see blood chi surging into the skies near the black dot and the firmaments were in chaos. With the appearance of the Rakshasa and Protoss in Myriad Phenomenon City at the same time, less than a tenth of the cultivators would be able to escape from such a calamity. At the very least, the cultivation world of Tianhuang mainland would suffer great losses for the next 100 years. That brat, Su Zimo, sure got lucky. By a freak combination of factors, he managed to leave earlier and avoid this calamity, Perfected Lord Tianming said hatefully. If that brat was in Myriad Phenomenon City, we could have made use of the Rakshasa and Protoss to kill him. At the very least, we would have gotten rid of this huge threat. Perfected Lord Tianming stood in midair with a dark expression, no one knew what he was thinking about. A moment later, his eyes flashed as though he had a plan. In a flash, he vanished from the spot. Di-Yin had a grim expression. After leaving Myriad Phenomenon City, Su Zimo followed him like a shadow and chased after him the entire time. No matter how many cultivation techniques or secret skills he released, he could not shake the latter off. Instead, the distance between them was closing. Di-Yin's spirit energy was almost dried up. Even if he consumed elixirs continuously, he could not withstand such an intense depletion of spirit energy. He believed that Su Zimo's situation would not be too good as well. But even so, the madman behind him did not have the slightest intention of stopping. His killing intent was like frost, like a thorn in his back. What a lunatic! Di-Yin cursed in his heart. He could no longer feel his legs, and waves of dizziness came from his mind. If he continued running like this, he would probably die of exhaustion before Su Zimo could catch up to him. As a peerless monster, Di-Yin was proud and arrogant. He naturally would not beg for mercy. Moreover, he knew that the two of them would not rest until one of them was dead. If he were in Su Zimo's shoes, he would never let him off. He had even said that not only Su Zimo, but also the people around him, he would kill them one by one, cutting the weeds and pulling up the roots. In fact, This was the reason why Su Zimo had no choice but to kill Diyin. Kill. Realizing that he could not escape, he spun around and summoned the Great Qian Imperial Seal, smashing it down viciously on Su Zimo's face. His spiritual power was exhausted, and he couldn't even activate the spiritual patterns on the Jade Seal. Even so, the Great Qian Imperial Seal was indestructible and could still smash Su Zimo into meat paste as long as there was enough strength. Humph. Although Su Zimo chased ferociously, his spirit perception was alerted the moment Diyin made any strange movements and he was on guard. A trapped beast is still fighting. Su Zimo held the coiling dragon seal in his hands and demonic chi coiled around him as he shouted, Diyin, your spiritual power is exhausted and you've used up all your means. However, I can still kill you without any spirit energy. Clang. The Great Qian Imperial Seal and Coiling Dragon Seal collided with a piercing sound of metal clashing and sparks flying everywhere. Ugh! Diyin grunted dully and his palm tore apart. He could not hold on to the Great Qian Imperial Seal and it flew out of his hands. 10 years ago at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, Diyin was still able to fight against Su Zimo without a clear victor. 10 years later, Diyin was no longer a match for Su Zimo. Even if Diyin had the inheritance of the human emperor, it was not enough. How did this person cultivate his blood chi and physique to such a frightening extent? Diyin's palms trembled as he pushed off the ground and retreated. Boom! Su Zimo landed on the ground and charged forward like a divine steed, bursting forth with a tragic aura. Su Zimo raised the coiling dragon seal with his right hand like an ancient demon with a torrential ferocity. Scooping in midair with his left hand, he grabbed the falling Great Qian Imperial Seal in his palm as well. Die! Almost in the blink of an eye, Su Zimo had already arrived before Diyin. The two gigantic seals covered the skies like two gigantic mountains. They brought with them a boundless might as they smashed down on Diyin's head. If he was hit, Diyin would die from the impact even if he had a connate defensive spirit weapon on him. Seeing that he could not dodge in time, Diyin yanked down the jade pendant on his waist and crushed it without hesitation. Buzz! A ball of dazzling light bloomed and formed a light shield around Diyin's body, protecting him within it. Boom! The two gigantic seals smashed against the barrier of light at the same time. Diyin was sent flying. He rolled on the ground for more than 100 feet before coming to a stop. That's a protection dermic weapon. Su Zimo's gaze narrowed. Protection dermic weapons such as pendants that could be carried around were extremely precious in the cultivation world and were prepared by super sects or mighty Dao lords for their closest kin. Diyin was once the #1 perfected being of Tianhuang mainland and was such a monster incarnate that he dominated those of the same cultivation realm. It was not surprising for him to carry a protection dermic weapon as such. Struggling to get up, Diyin's pupils constricted when he glanced at the barrier of light around him. The light on the light barrier dimmed significantly. What truly shocked him was that there was a crack on the barrier of light. Although it was tiny, he saw it clearly. That protection dermic weapon could even defend against the full-powered attack of the strongest Jinying Zhenjuan. In other words, with that protection dermic weapon and his terrifying combat strength, there was no way he would be in any danger in the ancient battlefield. To think that the barrier of light would crack after a single attack from Su Zimo. Even with a protection dermic weapon, it won't be able to protect you. Su Zimo's gaze was cold as he strode towards Diyin. Does the heavens really want me dead? Diyin glared at the incoming Su Zimo with a menacing expression and endless indignance. All of a sudden, a voice filled with mockery rang out in the air. Fufu, the two ants are fighting rather intensely. This voice was erratic, sometimes far, sometimes near, and sometimes far. It was impossible to determine its location. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes and his gaze flickered with lightning, landing on a dark streak of light that was streaking through the void not far away. The dark streak of light stopped in its tracks and revealed its true appearance. The intruder was tall and was pitch black in color. His eyes were vermilion and his face was green with fangs. He was extremely ugly and had a pair of gigantic wings of flesh that flapped gently behind him. Those 2 seals are not bad. I'll take them. The intruder looked down with a haughty expression and looked at Su Zimo and Diin as though he was looking at 2 dead men. That seems to be. Su Zimo frowned slightly. Diin glared at the intruder and frowned. Thereafter, as though he recalled something, his expression changed starkly as he exclaimed, "Rakshasa race." Indeed. Su Zimo's gaze turned cold. He had read about the primordial 9 races in the ancient books at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley. Now that Diin mentioned it, his judgment was confirmed. Chapter 761. Diin's eyes were first filled with shock when he saw the Rakshasa. Thereafter, he was elated as though he had realized something. The heavens are on my side. He was way too smart and quickly realized that this might be his only chance to escape. Su Zimo did not have much of an impression of the primordial 9 races. After all, that era was way too long ago. To Su Zimo, there were good and bad, good and evil, regardless of the race. It was the same for humans as well. However, the Rakshasa before him targeted his great Qian imperial seal and coiling dragon seal the moment he appeared, that caused a killing intent to surge in Su Zimo's heart. It was clear that the Rakshasa had ill intentions and wanted to kill him for his treasures. Su Zimo was expressionless as he put the great Qian imperial seal and coiling dragon seal into his storage bag. You have a death wish. The Rakshasa in midair was enraged when he saw Su Zimo's actions. He grinned slightly and revealed a row of blood-stained fangs as he spoke coldly. Right then, Diin suddenly spoke and said coldly, "Su Zimo, let's stop fighting and escape." Escape? Su Zimo shook his head. There's no way out for you no matter where you go. Fufu, it's unknown if you can survive with the Rakshasa here. Yet, you want to kill me. Diin sneered. Furthermore, even if you can survive, can you guarantee that your friends in Myriad Phenomenon City are still alive? Su Zimo's heart sank. Actually, the moment he saw the Rakshasa appear, he had thought about how many of them were here as well. If there was more than one of them, where were the other Rakshasas? Where were the Protoss that abducted Nian Chi did not appear the entire time? Was the appearance of the Protoss and Rakshasa race in the ancient battlefield related to the Jin Dan phenomenon ranking being brought forward? Su Zimo felt a sense of uneasiness in his heart. Su Zimo, I advise you to return to Myriad Phenomenon City as soon as possible to check on your friends and spirit beasts. If you return early, you might be able to collect their corpses. As Diin spoke, he retreated. Su Zimo's expression instantly turned gloomy, his eyes surging with ferocity. He stepped forward and said coldly, "Before I go back, I will kill you first. You 2 ants, how dare you ignore me?" The Rakshasa in the air widened his eyes. He felt that his dignity had been severely challenged and screamed. There was no way he knew that the 2 people before him were the top 2 of the phenomenon ranking this time round and could be considered as the strongest paragons of the current era, monster incarnates that were hard to come by in 10,000 years. Not to mention Su Zimo, even Di Yin's first reaction upon seeing the Rakshasa was not to flee. He believed that if he was in his peak condition, given his capabilities, he would definitely not lose to this Rakshasa before him. The one who truly threatened Diin was Su Zimo. Diin quickly retreated while Su Zimo chased after him relentlessly. The 2 monster incarnates completely ignored the Rakshasa clan. Whoosh! A black light pierced through the sky. Before they even got close, Su Zimo felt a tingling sensation at the back of his head. The Rakshasa clan had attacked. He was enraged that Su Zimo ignored him and put away the great Qian imperial seal and coiling dragon seal. His first goal was to kill Su Zimo first. What speed! Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Even if he was in his peak condition, he might not be able to reach this stage. However, Su Zimo cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and possessed the ability to predict the future. The cicada senses autumn before the wind blows. Su Zimo lowered his body and was almost stuck to the ground like an anaconda. While avoiding the black light, he tore through the grass in Di Yin's direction without slowing down at all. In Di Yin's eyes, Su Zimo had already vanished completely into the grass. Rustle! 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 The grass swayed, as though an ancient anaconda was slithering through it with a ferocious aura. Pust! Di Yin's expression changed and he felt his scalp prickle. He did not have time to think and punched in reverse viciously. Against that ferocious punch, Su Zimo's body suddenly went limp and he rested his arms on Di Yin's body, coiling them around him. After avoiding Di Yin's punch, it was the anaconda coil. Di Yin was alarmed and a hissing sound suddenly sounded in his ears, as though a gigantic bellows was being pulled continuously. This was Su Zimo inhaling with his mouth open. Su Zimo's body expanded at a visible speed and his blood chi surged, releasing a terrifying pressure that squeezed Di Yin's body continuously. That was a killing move from the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness. Back then, the number one perfected being of the North region, Shibuya of Glass Palace, died to this move from Su Zimo. Today, Su Zimo was going to make use of the anaconda coil to kill the former number one perfected being of Tianhuang mainland. Crack! 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 The light barrier around Di Yin's body let out a chilling sound and flickered, as though it could shatter at any moment. There was no way he could defend against the power of the shredding of the light barrier. All of a sudden, a cold glint appeared and sliced towards his throat. This was a rare opportunity to kill Di Yin. If he missed it, it would be difficult for him to encounter it again in the future. Even though he sensed danger, Su Zimo continued to coil around Di Yin's body and exerted strength. At the same time, he freed his left hand and grabbed towards the cold glint. You must have a death wish. The Rakshasa's voice sounded. Clang! The sound of metal clashing could be heard. The cold glint paused and revealed its true form. It was a curved saber that was shockingly curved with a chilling aura. Right now, the curved saber was in Su Zimo's hands. His palm was completely unharmed without a single injury. Su Zimo's left hand was naturally uninjured because he was wearing the Khanate spirit weapon glove that he snatched from Glass Palace's paragon. The Rakshasa was stunned for a moment but reacted instantly. With a cold gaze, he slashed in reverse at Su Zimo's neck at an extremely fast speed. Su Zimo had no choice but to withdraw a blood quencher from his storage bag and slashed forward. Clang! The blades collided. The Rakshasa's body shuddered and a look of shock flashed through his eyes. The strength of this human cultivator was as vast as the seas and was impossible to defend against. That single slash alone caused his arm to go numb and the curved saber nearly flew out of his hands. Impossible. Humans are born weak and have a lowly bloodline. They are the most insignificant ants. How can such a cultivator appear? I can't fight him head-on. In a flash, a series of thoughts flashed through the Rakshasa's mind and he stopped underestimating the other party. In a flash, he circled behind Su Zimo in the blink of an eye. This kind of movement technique was truly unfathomable. In order to defend against the Rakshasa, Su Zimo's hands were free and he could no longer restrain Di Yin with just his legs and waist. Herg! Di Yin growled deeply and a series of crackling sounds could be heard from his body. His tendons and bones rang at the same time as his body constricted and he seized the opportunity to escape from Su Zimo's grip. Fu. Di Yin sprinted into the distance and laughed sinisterly. Su Zimo, we'll meet again. The next time we meet, I'll definitely take revenge for today. What a pity, Su Zimo's gaze shifted and he lamented internally as he looked at Di Yin's departing figure. He was already entangled with the Rakshasa and could not split his attention to chase after Di Yin. Furthermore, he was indeed concerned about Myriad Phenomenon City. He did not know how much more time he would have to waste if he continued entangling with Di Yin. I've got to kill that Rakshasa and rush back as soon as possible. At that thought, Su Zimo's wrist trembled and blood quencher buzzed with blood chi. Su Zimo caressed the blade gently and said with a murderous aura, "Good brother, I'll let you have a taste of Rakshasa blood today." Chapter 762. There was an unusual fluctuation in the void behind him. Without even turning back, Su Zimo's gaze was cold as he slashed backwards. Splash! The sound of a tsunami surged and a blood beam expanded. There was no clash of weapons as expected. The Rakshasa had already dodged and appeared beside Su Zimo in a flash. "Oh!" The Rakshasa exclaimed softly with a hint of mockery and excitement in his tone. "To think that you've cultivated to the tsunami blood realm. Not bad. Your flesh must be exceptionally delicious. You want to eat my flesh? You don't know what's good for you." Su Zimo sneered. "And, up till now, you haven't realized who your opponent is." The Rakshasa shrieked, "I'm from the noblest race of the primordial era, the Rakshasa race of the primordial 9 races. We once ruled over thousands of races and a lowly ant like you isn't even fit to carry my shoes." The Rakshasa made use of his agile movement technique and circled around Su Zimo repeatedly, appearing left and right, far and near. His movement technique was erratic like a ghost. Su Zimo changed his saber stance repeatedly, sometimes firm and sometimes soft. However, the Rakshasa did not take him head-on and separated upon contact. "Hee, ant, you can't even touch my sleeves." The Rakshasa laughed smugly. Su Zimo stood on the spot and frowned slightly. If he was in peak condition and channeled his Jin Dan and inner core at the same time, coupled with the burst of his blood chi and physique, he could definitely match the speed of the Rakshasa. However, just now, he was almost depleted of spirit energy after his battle with Di Yin and the pursuit. There was truly no way he could catch up to the Rakshasa with the burst of his inner core, blood chi, and physique. "I might as well tell you something." The Rakshasa harumphed coldly. "The spirit wings that you're cultivating is a secret skill that you humans created after observing the movement techniques of the Rakshasa race. Ha! Unfortunately, you humans are too stupid. You can't even comprehend 1/10,000th of the Rakshas's movement technique's essence. The bloodline of you humans is too lowly and your bodies are too weak. How can you master the secret skill of the Rakshasa race?" In reality, Ethereal Wing's inspiration had indeed come from the Rakshasa race. Unfortunately, the human race and the Rakshasa race were ultimately two different races. The Rakshasa race's body structure and even their bloodline had evolved over countless years. Coupled with the pair of wings on his back, he felt almost no resistance as he flew through the air. However, the bodies of humans were completely different from those of the Rakshasa race. Naturally, Ethereal Wings could not match the speed of the Rakshasa race. With a grim expression, Su Zimo stabbed Blood Quencher into the ground with a reverse grip. His hands hung down naturally and his eyes were half closed, he did not speak to the Rakshasa at all. Su Zimo tried his best to clear his mind and keep his mind clear. "Humph, you want to waste time with me?" The Rakshasa's voice sounded once more. "When I'm speeding through the air, it's just like how you humans walk on the ground. I don't feel tired at all. Ant, you can't afford to waste time with me." Su Zimo remained silent. The Rakshasa was searching for his weakness and waiting for an opportunity to strike. He was waiting for an opportunity as well. One of them was active while the other was passive. Although they did not exchange blows or come into contact, there was a hidden killing intent. Once it was released, someone would definitely die on the spot. The Rakshasa was extremely cautious and did not advance recklessly, merely probing repeatedly. However, Suzimo was like an old monk in meditation and did not move at all. I heard that you have some friends in Myriad Phenomenon City. Both parties were in a stalemate for a moment before the Rakshasa suddenly said, "Let me remind you, those friends of yours should have already become food for the Rakshasa race." Ha 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 ha. The Rakshasa laughed arrogantly. This time round, more than 100 people from my race have entered the ancient battlefield. The sacred ground of the human race, Myriad Phenomenon City, is going to turn into a slaughterhouse for the Rakshasa race. Suzimo's arm trembled slightly, as though his mind was shaken. It was a flaw that could not be detected. However, the Rakshasa's gaze was sharp and he instantly realized that this was a rare opportunity. The killing intent in the Rakshasa's eyes intensified as he charged towards Suzimo in a flash. A flaw as such would only affect the other party for a moment at most. However, in a fight between top experts, especially those of the Rakshasa race who were terrifyingly fast, that moment was all that mattered. A single moment was enough to determine victory or even life and death. All of a sudden, Suzimo's black hair swayed slightly as he opened his eyes. They were frighteningly bright with a hint of mockery. Not good. The Rakshasa was alarmed when he saw Suzimo's gaze. He was the one who sold that flaw to me on purpose. I've been tricked. By the time the Rakshasa realized it, it was already too late. That single moment was more than enough for Suzimo. The Rakshasa channeled his bloodline and forcefully changed his direction and angle, escaping into the air at a shocking speed. His reaction speed was already at its limits. The Rakshasa believed that even if Suzimo was prepared, he would not be able to hurt him. However, his expression changed starkly the next moment when he caught sight of something from the corner of his eye. Suzimo did not chase after him at all and merely stood on the spot motionlessly. Unknowingly, a moon-white gigantic bow had appeared in his hands with 6 spirit patterns shimmering on it. Between his 2 fingers was a dark gold arrow that shone with 6 spirit lights as well. Moon concealment bow and dark gold arrow. 2 connate spirit weapons. Back in the battle at the Great Qian ruins of the North region, there was only 1 dark gold arrow left. Right now, Suzimo was holding it in his palm, ready to fire. Buzz! The bow was like a full moon and the arrow was like a shooting star. By the time the sound of the bowstring vibrating echoed in the Rakshasa's ears, the dark gold arrow had already arrived before him. Although Suzimo's movement technique could not catch up to the Rakshasa's speed, the burst of his 2 connate spirit weapons could. The Rakshasa was impressive as well. Even in such a passive situation, he was still able to dodge in midair and avoid his vitals by a hair's breadth. Exclamation point. The dark gold arrow pierced through the Rakshasa's flesh wing, creating a blood hole the size of a bowl. Those were not ordinary arrows. Those were connate spirit weapons. Although it looked like a blood hole, the power contained within crippled one of the Rakshasa's flesh wings completely. The flesh within the wings exploded and his tendons were snapped. Ah! The Rakshasa shrieked tragically. After shooting that arrow, Suzimo did not pause at all and pulled out blood quencher that was stabbed into the ground. Stomping on the ground, he soared into the air with a boom. His movements were fluid and did not give the Rakshasa any time to react. Slash! A thunderous roar sounded almost at the same time as the Rakshasa's shriek. The blood beam expanded and slashed down viciously on the Rakshasa's body, as though it could tear through the voids. The Rakshasa with a crippled wing was akin to a bird with a broken wing. After losing his greatest advantage as a Rakshasa, the Rakshasa was on the brink of collapse and could not even stabilize himself, let alone dodge Suzimo's surekill slash. Exclamation point. Blood spewed out and splattered from midair. The Rakshasa's massive body was sliced into 2 from the middle by blood quencher. His organs fell out and the stench of blood filled the air. The front half of the Rakshasa's body fell to the ground. His eyes were dim, but he was not dead yet. Spitting out blood from his mouth, he glared at Su Zimo with eyes that resembled a dead fish and stuttered. Why you'll definitely die here. The commander will definitely seek revenge for me. Don't worry and go. I'll kill your Rakshasa commander as well to accompany you. Su Zimo strode forward and crushed the Rakshasa's head with a single stomp. Chapter 763. The actual exchange between the two of them was extremely short. However, the dangers involved were not something that outsiders could understand. If he had been triggered by the Rakshasa's words and revealed an opening, or if he had been slightly slower, Su Zimo would have been the one lying on the ground right now. Su Zimo glared at the Rakshasa corpses with a grim expression. There was a high chance that the Rakshasa's words were true. Su Zimo was no saint and had not thought of saving everyone. However, Little Fatty, Monkey and the others were in Myriad Phenomenon City and their fates were unknown. He had to return to check on them. The situation in Myriad Phenomenon City was not optimistic. Perhaps it was even worse than he had imagined. However, a single Rakshasa was already so troublesome. If there were truly more than 100 Rakshasas in Myriad Phenomenon City, Su Zimo truly did not have much confidence. Furthermore, Su Zimo learned from the dead Rakshasa that a Rakshasa leader had arrived as well. The strength of the Rakshasa leader was most likely comparable to Jinying Jinjuan. Naturally, the safest method was to consume elixirs immediately and recuperate on the spot. Even if he did not recover to his peak condition, it would be safest for him to return after he had recovered 70% to 80% of his spirit energy and was able to release the Jin Dan phenomenon. However, Su Zimo was truly worried about Little Fatty and the others, and the uneasiness in his heart intensified. After pondering for a moment, he decided to return to Myriad Phenomenon City immediately. I hope nothing happens to them. Su Zimo murmured softly with a cold gaze. In a flash, he sped in the direction of Myriad Phenomenon City. Myriad Phenomenon City was filled with blood, chi and vengeful spirits surrounded it. Broken limbs and cold corpses could be seen everywhere on the streets, roofs and corners. It was a terrifying sight. The dark light in midair was still streaking. Sinister laughter was everywhere. Every single Rakshasa carried 2 to 3 cultivators who were barely alive and chewed on their flesh in huge mouthfuls. Their eyes shone with a green glow and they had excited expressions. Almost half of the 100,000 paragons were dead and even more were injured. I said, no one is allowed to leave without my permission. The commander of the Protoss stood in the air, looking down at the cultivators who had sunk into endless panic. His tone was flat, but there was an unquestionable majesty in it. No one could provoke the Protoss. The consequence of provoking the Protoss was death. Gradually, some of the cultivators stopped running. Their eyes were filled with endless despair. Some people stood there in a daze, looking at the corpses lying in pools of blood around them. Their eyes were dull, as if they had lost their souls. Very good. The Protoss leader smirked and said leisurely, as long as you stay here obediently, I won't kill you indiscriminately, and I won't treat you like food like the Rakshasa. In the eyes of the Protoss, the human race was lowly and their flesh was extremely dirty. They didn't even bother to taste it. Humph. When he heard that, the Rakshasa leader in midair harumphed coldly and raised his arm, asking loudly, Clansmen, are you full? My stomach is about to burst. How delightful. A Rakshasa roared in laughter. The Rakshasa leader nodded and waved his hand, declaring loudly, Ants of the human race, listen up. As long as you guys stay in Myriad Phenomenon City obediently and don't think about escaping, the Rakshasa race can spare your lives for the time being. Leader, we're full but we haven't killed enough. A Rakshasa could not contain the excitement in his eyes as he shouted. What do you know? The Rakshasa leader laughed sinisterly. Their flesh won't be fresh after we kill them. I intend to rear them in Myriad Phenomenon City as food for the future. Leader, you're wise. The eyes of many Rakshasas lit up as they shouted in unison. When he heard that, perfected Lord Yujun was so enraged that he shuddered. Monkey Lu sighed. When he saw that, it was as though he could feel the despair and helplessness of the human race when they were enslaved by the 10,000 races in the primordial era. More and more cultivators stopped running. There was a slim chance of survival if they continued running out of the city. At the very least, they could survive for a period of time if they stayed in Myriad Phenomenon City. Nian Qi is in the hands of the Protoss and I can't leave. You guys leave first and look for first. Tell him not to return no matter what. Qing had a conflicted expression and made that decision after pondering for a moment. Little Fatty and the others did not know Nian Qi. However, Qing saw everything clearly. The woman who was restrained by the Protoss and escorted over was Nian Qi. If you're not leaving, neither am I. Linghu suppressed the fear in his heart and patted his chest resolutely. Qing, don't worry. With me, Hu Batian, by your side, those foreign races will have to get through me first if they want to hurt you. Qing was touched and looked at Linghu with reddened eyes. We're not leaving either. Monkey's bloodshot eyes shifted as he said indifferently. Brother Monkey, there's no need to say anything else. We're sworn brothers and naturally have to advance and retreat together. That's right, advance and retreat together. The golden lion nodded and clenched his fists as well. Little Fatty scratched his head and looked at Ling Ro and Lin Xuanji, lost for a moment. Lin Xuanji smiled bitterly. There's no way I'm leaving. Myriad Phenomenon City was established by Enigma Palace. As a disciple of Enigma Palace, I'll have to die here even if I have to die. Ji Qingtian's gaze flickered as he said deeply, let's stay behind as well. Right now, most of the cultivators have chosen to stay in Myriad Phenomenon City and there are very few cultivators who have rushed out. If we make any strange movements, we'll definitely be targeted by the Rakshasa and Protoss. Alright. Everyone agreed. Gather together with the three Jinying Jinjuan as the center. The Rakshasa leader looked at perfected Lord Yujun and the other two with a mocking tone. Why are you so slow? You must have a death wish. A cultivator who was more severely injured staggered and was berated by a Rakshasa. His head was sliced off and he died on the spot. The remaining cultivators were shocked and hastened their footsteps. The Protoss stood with their hands behind their backs with arrogant expressions. There was no pity in their eyes as they watched coldly from the sidelines. Before long, all the cultivators in the city were gathered together in a dense crowd. Perfected Lord Yujun stood up with the help of Perfected Lord Luo Shua and looked around. Yesterday, there were more than 100,000 human paragons here. Chapter 764. Viscous fresh blood flowed from the gaps between the green stones in a blinding manner. More than 100 Rakshasas paced around the remaining cultivators and their gigantic feet left blood-colored footprints on the green stones in a frightening manner. The Rakshasa race's massive bodies and pitch-black flesh wings exuded a strong sense of oppression. Many cultivators in the crowd shivered and lowered their heads, not daring to look at the menacing faces of the Rakshasa race and their glowing green eyes. The atmosphere turned extremely stifling. Many cultivators even breathed carefully, afraid that they would attract the attention of the Rakshasa race if they caused any commotion. Ha 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 ha. The Rakshasa leader was delighted when he saw that and reared his head in laughter. So these are the so-called paragons of the human race? They're truly weak. Nobody retorted. Lin Xuanji and the others had cold expressions and their hearts burned with rage that they were still suppressing. The Protoss leader stood in midair and swept his gaze across the cultivators gathered below with an indifferent expression. Most of the cultivators here can't be considered as paragons. Pausing for a moment, the Protoss leader changed the topic and smirked, saying leisurely, I heard that there are 108 people on the phenomenon ranking of the human race. Only those who can leave their names on the phenomenon ranking can be considered paragons of the human race. Oh. The Rakshasa leader smirked and his gaze shifted as he declared, Paragons of the phenomenon ranking, step forward and let me take a look. The Rakshasa leader emphasized the word paragons with a murderous aura. Everyone could hear the killing intent in the Rakshasa leader's words. Initially, being able to be ranked on the phenomenon ranking was a great honor for cultivators and they would even be rewarded handsomely. But now, the phenomenon ranking had become a death sentence for those cultivators. Nobody stepped forward. Anyone who stepped forward would be courting death. Foo-foo. The Rakshasa leader laughed sinisterly. If no one steps forward, I'm going to kill. A commotion broke out in the crowd. Spare me, senior, please spare my life. I'm willing to follow you and become your slave and spirit beast. Finally, a cultivator could not take it any longer and knelt before the Rakshasa leader with a thud with a horrified expression. It was Duan Qingping of Clear Wind Temple who was ranked 20th on the phenomenon ranking. He could definitely be considered a genius of the human race. However, Duan Qingping was kneeling in front of the Rakshasa leader and begging for mercy without any dignity. They were even willing to become the other party's spirit beast and servant. No one laughed at him. Even the perfected cultivator of Cool Breeze Temple had died at the hands of the Protoss commander, let alone him. Even an ant craved for life, let alone him. Most people cultivated for the sake of longevity. Not to mention a perfected Jean Dan, even if it was a perfected cultivator, almighty, or patriarch, who could truly see through life and death. You want to be my slave, spirit beast? The Rakshasa leader glared at Duan Qingping and said slowly, you humans are not worthy. The Rakshasa leader snickered menacingly and chopped off Duan Qingping's head with a backhand slash. Holding it in his hand, he smashed it into pieces and gulped down the brain juice. The Rakshasa leader gripped Duan Qingping's head and burst into laughter. Kik, paragon. Phenomenon ranking. You're only fit to be our food. The 100-odd Rakshasa race beings roared in laughter and their expressions turned even more menacing, resembling malevolent ghosts that had crawled out of hell. You foreign races deserve to die. At this moment, a slightly hoarse voice suddenly sounded from the crowd. It was extremely sudden at that moment. The crowd was in an uproar. Many cultivators turned towards the source of the voice. Everyone wanted to see who would dare to jump out and say, you foreign races deserve to die, in a situation where they could not even protect themselves. The laughter of the Rakshasa race beings stopped abruptly as well. Instantly, the Rakshasa leader's expression darkened. A figure walked out slowly from the crowd. The cultivator was dressed in black robes and had black hair. However, his face was frighteningly pale and he was injured. He looked extremely weak and his gaze was empty and dazed as well. However, this person exuded a sharp aura. He walked out from the crowd with an indomitable aura. 7th on the phenomenon ranking, Dugu Jian. Nobody could imagine the pressure this figure had to endure in a situation as such where myriad phenomenon city was filled with blood and corpses was filled with corpses. Many cultivators had conflicted gazes as they looked at that lonely back view. There was admiration, pity and numbness. In the crowd, Hang Qiuyu looked at Dugu Jian's figure and lowered his head silently. He had lost to Dugu Jian in the fight for the phenomenon ranking. However, he had never admitted defeat in his heart. Both of them still had a long way to go. It was only at this moment that Hang Qiuyu realized that he had lost completely. Sword cultivators cultivated their sharpness. They would rather break than bend and press forward with indomitable will. Against the massacre of the Rakshasa race beings, his sharpness had already vanished. However, Dugu Jian's sharpness was still present and was turning sharper. Pointing his sword at the Rakshasa race. Good, you're very good. The Rakshasa leader twisted his neck and let out cracking sounds. With a fierce gaze, he laughed menacingly. Who else is indignant? Step forward and let me take a look. Me too. Another voice sounded from the crowd. It was weak but incomparably resolute. Su Xiaoning. This timid woman had changed a lot after experiencing the death of her kin. At that moment, she mustered her courage and stood out. Although the Rakshasa race is one of the primordial 9 races and your bloodline is noble and strong from birth, so what? In the ancient era, the primordial 9 races were defeated and the Rakshasa race was defeated as well. You can only stay in a corner. Although the human race is weak from birth, we won't be bullied and slaughtered by foreign races. His words were sonorous and powerful. Many cultivators felt their blood boil and even their fighting spirit was reignited. Ha 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 ha. The Rakshasa leader looked at Xiaoning and Dugu Jian mockingly and burst into laughter. How dare 2 ants like you think that you can resist? Me too. Lin Xianji walked out and grit his teeth. Rakshasa race, this is the sacred ground of the human race. Every single brick and tile here is the blood and sweat of Fairy Ling Long. Even if I have to risk my life, I'll guard this place and never retreat. Me too. Demoness Ji stood out. Count me in. Little Fatty shook his massive body and squeezed his way out. Me too. Me too. Shi Jian, Ji Qingtian, Ling Rou, and the others stood out one after another. Their voices sounded from the crowd one after another. Perfected Lord Luo Shui's eyes were bloodshot. Monk Yin Lu's eyes turned moist as well. Perfected Lord Yu Jun was emotional and shuddered. This was a true paragon. This was the future hope of the human race. In the ancient era, it was precisely because paragons stood out one after another and generations of experts fought against the primordial 9 races and the primordial 9 races that led to the current situation. The human race was unyielding and could only fight. Even if they could not defeat them, they could not submit. That was the spirit and soul of the human race. Caw, caw. Monkey's inner core circulated and his body expanded. Demonic chi coiled around him as he thumped his chest with both hands, letting out thumping sounds. His bloodshot eyes shone with a rumbling battle intent as he roared in laughter. What dogsh * T Rakshasa race? I've had enough of your faces. Roar. Linghu and the Golden Lion roared one after another and stood out from the crowd. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.